Sir, you're charged with especially aggravated kidnapping. You're also charged with aggravated assault, and you're charged with theft of a firearm worth less than $2,500.
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Hello and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the recovery addict, and boy, do I have a case for you today.
Why is the dog chewing on this guy?
I think they have got the wrong guy there.
Got the wrong guy, and the dog was biting him.
He roughing him up quite a bit. There's a lawsuit.
All right, we're going to bail on the audio just for a minute. Crazy stuff happening out of Florida right now. I'm not sure what's in the water down there, but apparently they're drinking the same stuff as California because there's a high-speed chase that's ended in a SWAT team in somebody's front yard. Live standoff pictures coming up out of Florida right now. Thank you, Golden Mom. Sorry, Golden Mom, for the tip on that one.
Not a camel.
Yeah, it's crazy. Bay One Gaming, by the way. Bay One Gaming, congratulations on winning the internet today. Coming in hot as soon as I posted it. He says 2. I think he meant yo. But 2, then oops. Mo comes in right afterwards. We are back. Welcome. These are live pictures. We don't know what's going on here. So we're going to keep an eye on that just briefly. As that's coming in out of WFLA in Florida right now. Sorry. I do apologize for taking so long in getting the placeholder up for the new live stream, but heard the tweet. The problem was Mrs. R.A., right as I finished the live stream, she brought in a plate with a piping hot grilled chicken sandwich, toasted grilled chicken sandwich. It had everything except the pickles, so of course I added pickles to it, spicy maple bourbon pickles. It was amazing, but I could think of nothing but the sandwich from the moment I smelled it and saw it. So I got the sandwich, and then after I was finished eating and had reclined appropriately, then I thought, oh great, I probably should set up the new live stream. And somebody, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, so somebody might have texted and said, hey, let me know when when you post it because I want to win. But it was not Bay One Gaming, so the cheating did not help. I tried to help as much as I could. I gave you a countdown as to when I was going to post it. But Bay One Gaming, congratulations. You won fair and square. Waiting for the video to come back here. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on the courtroom. We'll keep an eye on that as we're watching the courtroom as well because
Alex stole it as well.
Let's see. Courtroom, nothing's really happening here. We're just watching this. We've got the audio from the courtroom on. So we'll hear the bailiff yell. We won't miss anything if we're watching this. You can see the SWAT team stacked up there behind the armored personnel carrier. Not sure where it is. I'm surprised we have a view from this angle. I thought it would be a little higher, but maybe they're closing airspace around it. I don't know. Interesting. Okay, so welcome, Mo. Just getting ready for the afternoon on my TV. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Mo. Thanks for being here. Bay One Gaming is ready to serve, and we had a peaceful transfer of power, which is always a good thing to see when somebody wins the internet. We are regifting it, which is sort of unceremoniously ripping it out of the clutches of the previous winner, and wrapping it up again and gifting it to somebody else, which we do usually 2 times a day. But let's see. Adam says, I missed it. I was preparing my acceptance speech. You have to have your acceptance speech as the second text, Adam. I think that's the trick. Good afternoon, Victoria, Laura. Bay One, congratulations. Graceful second, third place people coming in here. Katrina was so close. Let's see. Myra, glad to see you're here ready to serve. Just go ahead and, got some movement there. Seems a little risky. People in the backyard as well. I guess we're not supposed to show that. But, yeah, we'll see. It's interesting. People are moving at the same time around the building. Appreciate you passing the torch. O-Town chill. I hear you guys are getting some snow. Is that the fact? How are you enjoying the snow, O-Town? Katrina, let me know how much you guys end up with up there. Okay. Let's see, Rowdy. We did a pretty good roll call this morning. I'm just trying to call out anybody I missed or forgot I called the first time around because, that happens as well. Rich is here. Golden Mom. Obviously, you texted me about this little video we're watching right now. Thank you for that. Myra giving encouragement. She's a great boss, don't you think? She was a great choice for CEO of the internet. I think we're going to be in good hands here. Okay, not a drama llama. There's a beep. Has anyone been watching the car chase now stand up in Florida? No. What car chase? Not a drama llama? No, just kidding. You said that long before I went live. That was 15 minutes ago. So I did not watch the car chase part. I'm hoping they actually rewind and show us a little bit of the action that happened there because I missed that. I was busy chasing down the remnants of my salad, or not my salad, my sandwich on my plate. Let's see. Yeah, the command should work now.
I'm not a camel.
Started watching the Murdaugh on Netflix. Whoa. Yeah, they will suck you in, Minsky. They will. There are some great videos out there. Let's see. Let me catch up with sort of current here. Murdaugh stole was the title. Murdaugh stole it. Let me get my sound effects up here. Okay.
Good afternoon, folks. JB here with you live on WFLA now.
There's
a SWAT
JB.
Standoff
There's a lawsuit.
is taking place in Hialeah, Florida.
Hialeah,
The armored
Florida.
vehicle pulled into the driveway behind a vehicle that suspects were pursuing on the Florida Turnpike in South Florida this afternoon.
Hopefully
The
they're gonna
suspect
rewind and show us some of the
appears to have
footage here.
gone into this home. We do not know what the suspect
He's probably in there
wanted
kickback, taking
for,
it
if
easy
there
is what I'm
was
guessing.
A flag on the vehicle, or if the suspect himself was wanted.
I was kicked
As
back,
far as
taking
the
it
suspect
easy.
entering the home, we have seen the front door of this home open once, and we do not know how many people are inside. When it was opened very briefly.
Okay, we're going to turn off his audio just briefly. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll switch over to the court as soon as the bailiff calls everybody to order. But, yeah, if you want to watch WFLA now has this live. Let's see. Did it so bad. Here we go. Bring Putin Jim. I have to admit, I'm not super excited for this next block of testimony. I think the combination of Poot and this witness's sort of a very level presentation will make it not gripping just to listen to. I think he has good information. He sounds like a good witness as far as I think he does. He is an expert. These credentials are not like internet classes over the weekend type thing. Sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Some of the stuff seems a little dated to me. It seems like he's done things the same way for a long time. Samantha Terry gifts another membership. Right now, let's see who got that one. Jonathan Davenport. Congratulations, Jonathan. Samantha Terry got you a membership. Wonderful. Let's see. Who parks a boat or truck on a lawn? Welcome to the South. Jay Hughes, welcome to the South. That's all I'll say. That's all parking space. That right there, what you're seeing is a center console boat. They're very common over here. Not as common maybe out in the West where you have more water skiing boats and things like that. But this is a center console boat that is. Oh, here we go. Here's the replay. Let me listen to JB here just a minute here.
Afternoon, about an hour or so ago.
So it looks like the black
when the
vehicle
was being, the black SUV that is in the driveway now was being pursued at a high rate of speed by authorities. There were speeds that got significantly faster than this. I am monitoring the touchscreen. If anything happens on that shot, we're going to go back to it immediately.
Look at all those cars in
This was what the
formation
chase looked
behind
like
him.
earlier. We'll come back to show
In
you
California,
some
they
of the
do single
highlights
file,
of
but
that
here they like
high-speed
block off the whole
pursuit,
road.
and what led to this moment in time.
Arkansas, on the other hand, as soon as you start pulling away from the officer, they just try to put you in the ditch. That is not the place you want to try to run from the police in Arkansas. High-speed chase so we could make it home and watch Recovery Addict on the Alex Murdaugh trial. I sure hope not. If the SWAT goes in there and I'm on the big screen, they're probably going to be calling me next. So, let's see. RA had fried cheese wrapped around a dill pickle for lunch. Goodness was good. It sounds delicious. Mine was chicken strips, like fried chicken strips, grilled chicken strips with mozzarella melted on the top on toasted homemade bread. And then I added the obviously the spicy maple bourbon pickles. More sirens itself, more incentive to push on the gas. Let's see. Mid-North Carolina, our cops just ram them. We're learning from Arkansas is what we're doing. Anyway, welcome. Thanks all here. We're starting the second half of the day, the Alex Murdaugh trial. We're actually starting with a little bit of news as we wait. We're checking in the courtroom periodically, and we're just sitting there, so nothing's really happening there. The day started, the afternoon started, I guess this was during lunch, where this vehicle, this is a tape delay video, but this vehicle was running from the cops, and Golden Mom sent me a text and said, "Hey, are you seeing this?" And I'd actually just barely clicked on it. I'm like, I'm watching it now. So we'll check that out until the trial starts here, just because we've got nothing but the state seal to look at. Anyway, as it stands right now, I'm not sure exactly when the police. Oh, the door's opening. I see a crack in the door. This is the live shot. The door has opened very, very little, and it's opening further. And he's like, "Oh, no, I gave it the office. See you guys." And he closed the door again. No, he's still there, standing at the door. So that's a good sign. That means there's negotiations going on, or at least some communication, one way or the other. Let's see if they're door's shut. Their crack shot with the tear gas might be able to get a tear gas canister in that little opening. But they don't know what's inside the house. We'll see what happens. Need to be glamping says recovery addicts supposed to be getting upwards of 20 inches of snow starting this afternoon through Thursday morning. Need to be. Where are you at again? What region of the United States do you call home? Please don't say North Carolina, because I do not want 20 inches of snow. We would not know what to do with it. Most of us don't own snow shovels here. Very few of us even have scrapers for our windshields. It's just how it rolls over here. We don't need them. Suzanne, grab something to eat. Be right back. Where are the lights? I don't know. It might be really bright down there, so can't see them very well. Okay. When the guy pulled up in the drive, he just meandered into the house as if he just came home from work. No haste at all. I love it. I love it. Dude's got not a care in the world. He's just kicked back, taking it easy. I get the innocent boat out of there. Hey, Ivan, welcome. Let's see here. I look forward to this witness. I love the elderly. There will be no ageism in Ivan's watch. I protect the old, the young, and the drunks. Thanks, Ivan, for that. We're just watching just a little bit. There's a police chase happening out of Florida right now as we're, just keeping an eye on that to keep busy. It looks like they pretty much ran him to right where they wanted him. They blocked off all the other roads. Here he goes. He's just getting out. It's like, oh, yeah. Park in the driveway. Check the phone. Lock the car. Hold on. What police chase, right? What police chase? Who are all these cops down the road? And here comes the Bearcat. Zoom, right behind him. Those are some pretty interesting vehicles. Don't touch the vehicle. There's no need to bump it. He's clearly stopped. You don't need to ram it. He's gone inside. Anyway, keep an eye on that. I'll watch that here on the big screen. If anything happens that I can show you, I'll let you know. Weather Watch comes in with this one. This is not good news. A tornado warning, 1:03 p.m. Central Time. Severe thunderstorms capable of producing both tornadoes and excessive straight-line wind damage. We're located near Wentzville, moving northeast at 40 miles per hour. This is Missouri. Please be safe out there if you are in this area. Robert Counts, welcome to the gallery. Thank you for becoming a member. This is we welcome you with open arms, but as soon as you get close enough, we're going to grab you with both arms and not let go. So we won't let you leave. You're one of us now. Welcome. Appreciate you supporting the channel, and hope you love it here. Okay, still nothing from court. The bailiff's still silent. We've got just about 2 minutes before we expect the bailiff to yell at us, and we do have the volume turned up for that. Let's see, I'm going to also roll. I think I'm going to record that one. We'll see. Okay, Jet Set, you're here. Nancy, I see we're having freezing rain right now. That is no fun. New trial, who dis? Says Cachette. The new trial, this trial is a ways off. First, they have to get him out of the house and get him in custody. Then there will be a trial. Usually, they just flooded that neighborhood. You can see every road there, just police surrounding that whole neighborhood. So, Let's see. James from the court was just tweeting here. I want to see what he said today. James, I believe, is in court, but he says, I was expecting this trial to be an exciting competition of legal prowess. Then I was bored, but now I'm entertained by the entire show of it all. Definitely getting curiouser, and this week we'll get even more so. James from the court provides some great analysis from inside the courtroom. He gained his fame from the Johnny Depp trial. But let's see. Guy has 4 stars and hiding in a corner. Not sure what's going to happen. Well, I'll watch it and see. The neighbors look like they have no idea what's happening. I've never seen 20 inches of snow, says G. Smith. It's coming down. A few of you could probably send some pictures or post them on the Discord or Facebook to show that. Back to the left, says defense is not on their best performance today. This is not their best day. And, part of it is they have to work with what they're given. Okay. They don't get to pick and choose. The prosecution does get to pick and choose which cases they prosecute. That's their choice. The DA gets to choose that. If it's a really bad case, they just don't prosecute. They don't have the evidence. Defense doesn't have that luxury. They have to defend if they get charged, and he got charged, so they have to defend. And it's difficult. It's difficult, especially if you've got all this evidence or information to have to justify or explain away. Let's see. There has been a lot of love today. Make sure you enable gifts. Thank you, Bay One Gaming. This morning was incredible with so many people giving so many memberships. A lot of you are in green now, courtesy of a few people who were very generous this morning. Thank you all. It's good to have all of you here. I definitely appreciate everybody, even those who are just here lurking, who have never typed, because I know you're here. Ronnie, I know you're here. JB as well. I hear you I connect with you on the burner phone, but I know you're not here in chat. Shout out to all you guys, and there are probably more as well. Okay, let's see. I'm expecting any second now the judge to be here because he's about a minute and a half late. What do you think about the defense request to limit questioning if Alex Murdaugh testifies? K-Frame, this is, to me, I can see why they would want to do this, right? Let me change. Is my mic weird? No, it's not. Okay, I can see why they'd want to do this because Alex Murdaugh is facing charges in financial crimes. If he gets up there to testify in his own defense, which he has the right to do, okay, it would just seem like, okay, you can't put him up there and make him answer questions that will incriminate him in other trials, right? That wouldn't be fair, but he should have the right to defend himself in this trial, in the murder case. So I can look at it from the defense standpoint and say, my client has the right to defend himself without, having to admit to everything else that he's being charged with. I can see that point. I hope they find some case law that will really spell that out and say, yes, getting up on the stand, testifying is like waiving the fifth. So you no longer have the right to self-incrimination, again, to prevent yourself from incriminating yourself. You agree to answer questions. So you've waived that right. But at the same time, you haven't waived the right in every crime and other things. They should be able to have a little border around it. That's just my take. I just want him to get on the stand. That's what I want. I want Alex on the stand. I do want to hear the questions, and I want to hear his answers. Okay. Let's see. If he testifies, he's toast. Pretty accountant, I felt that way for several people. I feel like I'm talking into a can. Is there some weird audio thing going on? Let's see. Cut that off. Nope, that's not it. Sorry, guys. I'm just... Nope, it's... Everything's right. All the levels are right. Everything's good. Okay. Well, I'll fix it later. Let's see where we are. Sunshine Sunflowers, hello, Katrina and Katerina together. What evidence did they arrest Alec on? Anyone? Well, it was the evidence that was presented to the grand jury, which some of it was a lie, Katerina. The lies about the guns that were loaded exactly the same way as the bullets they found on the ground, which was not true. We heard that evidence, I think it was from Agent Owens, right? You see the one that lied to the grand jury? St. Louis, Missouri, under tornado watch. Maybe siren soon if we get a tornado warning. I'm by the St. Louis International Airport. Kathy, stay safe, please. Contact your loved ones in the area. Make sure they're doing all they need to prepare. That's scary. That's no joking matter. Samantha Terry, got to go. Enjoy your afternoon shopping with Mom. Samantha, thank you so much. You've been amazing this morning. Appreciate your support. Have a wonderful day with your mom. We'll catch you on the next one. He doesn't have to waive. His partners have testified that he stole from the firm. His partners can testify, but that's different than him testifying and admitting guilt. I have to admit, I've taken more home office days since discovering Recover Addicts channel. I haven't. Well, you have the privilege of being the boss, right? So that's rank has its privilege there, as far as that goes. Sound fine here. Thanks, Laura. It's just that it sounds weird. It sounds like there's an equalizer on that's making my voice sound funny. And I do have an equalizer on for the court, but that's a different channel, so it shouldn't be affecting what I'm hearing right now. Still nothing out of Florida. Still waiting for the doors to open and somebody to come out, but no action as of yet. So back to court here. Sound fine here. Thank you. The judge. Oh, I missed it. The judge. Judge is predictably late. There we go.
All rise and come to order.
Man, that was a good one. All rise and come to order. He's always like grinning like a kid, like, they're standing for me. He loves his job. He really does. Puzzleman, I would say vanilla, but I like to add stuff to it. So, I mean, I like making milkshakes. And I always start with vanilla as the base and then add a variety of things, whether it's candy or other flavors or fruit or things to it.
You may bring the jury.
Alex, actual arrest. That was at Alameda, right? Maisla? I don't know if I've seen that. They had a deal where he was going to come turn himself in, and he was going to come straight there, and instead he shows up at Alameda, and so the police who were following him just grabbed him there. I don't know if there's body cam footage of that. Ivan, I almost clicked on your message, and I'm glad I didn't. We do need all rise. Today has been some good sound effects, both the first thing in the morning as well as right after lunch for all rise. I'll try to get those. I am going to try to remove the audience background, so I have to do a lot of audio editing to remove the background noise. But if I can get a good, clean clip out of that, I will do that. Bailiffs are great at shouting. It's like the one requirement they need to have. You need to be able to stand for long periods of time and yell at people. I think he gets a bonus based on volume, Metro Olympus.
All right, thank you. You may proceed.
Please, Court, Your Honor. So, Mr. Zerchi, before we broke for lunch, we were talking about how one would process. We showed a floor that you sprayed some chemical, I can't remember what the name of it is,
Yes, sir.
which would bring out
really crappy. Hang on.
previously invisible imprints of feet. You could do the same thing for fingerprints?
Yes, sir. Or it would enhance what you can see already.
I'm sorry?
It would enhance what you could see already.
All right. But it would also bring out things that you can't see.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about crime scene processing. Let me, we could bring a video up, please, and y'all need to cover your screens, please.
Here's a warning. It's still funny that they cover the screens there.
Everything done? I think we want to do stage number 1. Okay, we'll start that, please. Can you play that for us, please?
This side of it. You got it right here. The opposite one.
Well, the dad's over there. Actually, hold on. The people just won't do it. Fire rescue might have some more sheets we can steal.
That's right. It shouldn't be.
Steal?
Okay, so you recognize that as Paul Murdaugh's body covered by a sheet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We just saw some officers apparently taking that sheet off. This officer in particular stepped inside the feed room.
Objection.
Has that officer stepped inside the feed room?
The one on the extreme right of the image, yes.
Okay. And did you notice any protective covering on their feet?
No, sir.
And I call them booties. What do you call them?
Shoe cots or booties.
What?
Shoe cots or booties.
Oh, booties, okay. And is that...
Shukacho booties.
What, if anything...
Shukacho booties.
Under the procedures you understand, is the purpose of those?
It's to keep your shoes from contaminating the scene with any residue that may be on them. And secondly, also not to allow the imprint pattern from your footwear to contaminate the scene.
Okay. Is that procedure that you teach? Is that procedure that's accepted? Is that, what is that?
It's standard operating procedure.
Standard operating procedure around the world?
It should be, yes.
Okay. Now, go forward with it, please.
There is his wall partner.
You can see that officer has 2 feet inside the feed room?
Yes, sir.
No booties?
Correct.
Okay, keep going.
I don't think you can fit it in 300 black hair under there.
That's what I heard, Maisla.
Unless it's the shortest 300 black.
She cut your booties.
I don't think he put that phone back. I haven't asked the dad about the phone, but dad did say he came over and checked their pulses. Beyond that, I don't know what else he may have done.
I think his defense's plan to prove that Alex lied about everything.
He had a shotgun. He did have a shotgun with him, and I have secured that in my vehicle.
Yeah, but it's an upward shot. Here's the one over 6 meters from the water burning drain inside the room. Yeah, but that's to get his head on the So that is good.
Let's go to McDowell body cam, stage 6. And that was, for the record, Green's body cam, stage 1.
There is parts next to him there.
All I want to do is see if I can get where you can lift it on each corner. Lift it that way. You go right here to the office.
So the dad's over there.
All I want you to do.
Fire rescue might have some more sheets.
That's okay. That's right. It shouldn't be anybody fire rescue right here.
There is his law partner is back there.
Is that the same shot, but shot from inside the feed room?
It appears to be, yes.
Okay, thank you. You can turn that off. So let me ask you a couple questions about what we've just seen.
Yes,
You indicated just a moment ago that they should have had booties on, and you've explained why.
As a basic precaution so that they don't contaminate the scene, and also the scene doesn't contaminate them.
Let's talk about that sheet that was on Paul's body.
Yes, sir.
Tell us, first, would you use a sheet to cover a body?
Depends on the circumstance.
Under these circumstances?
Under these, in that the victim is not in a public access area,
Right.
possibly. If there were other signs of contamination. In the last video, you could see raindrops coming down. But instead of a porous sheet, I'd probably use a tarp of some sort.
Something that's not absorbent?
Correct. And as a last resort.
And why would you not want to use something that was absorbent?
Well, one, because it absorbs, but it absorbs both ways. The water hitting on the sheet would go into the matrix of the material, and anything that's under it, or in this case on Paul's body, could also be absorbed up into the sheet, whether it's blood or other biological fluids that might be present.
And if you had used a sheet or any other material, would you, once you've done using it, would you discard it, or would you save it and have it analyzed, and why?
It should be preserved, and it should go with the remains, all right, presumably to the medical examiner's office, and then be turned over to whoever the investigating agencies are, all right, for further analysis.
And what would you be looking for?
Because there's physical contact between the sheet and the victim's body, any trace evidence such as hairs, fibers, or other materials that may be loose could be picked up, especially when it becomes moist. All right, it now becomes like a sponge and actually picks things up and takes it away. You don't know what's not there.
So, let me understand this. If somebody had walked by, let's say the assailant had walked by that body, and we're all losing hair all the time, some of us more than others, but if you run your hand through your hair, you'll lose hairs, right?
Yes, sir.
And if the assailant walked by there, and it looks like he was, the assailant, I think everyone agrees, was relatively close on that second shot anyway.
Objection.
Objection is sustained. In a hypothetical, if the assailant was close to somebody and walked by them, is there a possibility, probability that hair or other trace evidence from the assailant would end up under that sheet and between the sheet and Paul's body?
It's possible, yes.
Okay. Now, with the possibility, is that the reason you say save the sheet and have it processed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's also talk about well, first of all, you've read all the records in this case. You've looked at all the evidence that was taken from the scene. Do you find any record that that sheet was saved?
I saw no indication of it, no, sir.
Okay. Or processed?
Correct.
Paul's clothes. He was clothed. What should be done with those?
Again, once they're removed from the victim, whether it's done at the medical examiner's office or at another location, again, they should be submitted to the laboratory for analysis. And again, it would be trace transfer evidence, hairs, fibers, or other materials, as well as any of the wound patterns that would appear on the outer garments themselves. Looking for things like gunshot residue, pattern analysis. It would be very helpful.
Do you see any evidence in any report of those clothes being preserved, let alone examined?
With the documents I've been provided, I have not seen any.
Okay. Now, you've just recommended doing some things in your 30 years of doing crime scene, 20?
40.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to exaggerate. 20 years
40,
of doing
30.
crime scene
What's
work,
a couple
going to
decades
crime
between
scenes
friends?
and preserving evidence. Are these the kinds of things, or these things that you've done on your crime scenes in the past?
Depends on what stage the crime scene is being examined. If it's at the very end, you finished all your documentation, you finished your evidence identification, you finished all your photography, your sketch maps. As long as there's not an exigency, an emergency that's present, and i.e. that would be life safety. If it's been determined, or the presumption of death, in this case from both victims, you can slow the investigation down. Right? There's no longer an emergency to rush through everything, and you take everything through a very systematic approach.
Have you
try
done
to
that?
be as detailed as possible.
Have you done that in the past?
Yes, sir.
And if this had been your crime scene, would you have saved that sheet and saved his clothes?
Definitely.
I'm sorry?
Definitely.
Okay. Now, let's talk about Maggie, and I'm just going to cut to the chase on this. Maggie had the same kind of sheet over. Would you have done the same thing?
Yes, sir.
You would have saved the sheet, sent it for analysis, saved her clothes, sent it for analysis.
Bagging and tagging each thing separately so there's no cross-contamination between the items.
Each item bagged individually so there's no cross-contamination.
Correct.
Was that done in her case?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about let me see, I'm going to try to expedite this a little bit.
Suspect's been taken into
Okay,
custody in Florida.
Let's go to the Elmo, please.
Looks like a successful resolution. Looks like they went up to the door and grabbed him. He agreed to come out. They grabbed him,
States
backed
39
up,
for the record.
put him in a police car, and he's out. So. best possible outcome. No
Now,
one injured, apparently.
You understand? What do you understand this to be?
It's a photograph, and it's from a report from Agent Worley from SLED.
And this is of the feed room floor?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, now, earlier we saw you spray some things on a murder scene in New York. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Have you, I think Agent Worley identified or testified that in her opinion, based on her experience in footwear, that Paul's shoes were in here somewhere. Is that correct?
A pattern similar to the shoes that Paul was wearing is present, yes.
Okay. Now, did she also indicate that she also found patterns consistent with one of the law enforcement officer's shoes?
Yes, sir, she did.
That may very well have been the guy we saw step into the feed room, right?
Possible.
Okay. Now, if you had come on this crime scene and saw this, would you felt compelled to do more that we've heard from Agent Worley?
Thanks for the clarification.
For several reasons, yes.
Okay. First of all, what would you have done and why would you have done it?
I wouldn't have walked into the room.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
You stand back, you make your observations, and you determine a course of action. And everything is done in a sequence at a crime scene. Right? Again, the first part is viewing it, using a visual examination. Once you've identified areas of interest, then you determine the methodology that you're going to use to either collect, seize, document, right, the type of evidence that might be there.
So what would you have done? If you looked in the door and you see this, what do you do?
I would have started from the doorway and worked towards the back of the room in that it's a small enclosed area. So you work from front to back.
When you say work from front to back, what do you mean work? What would you do is right inside the door or right outside the door?
You would start documenting with close-ups and in the case, yes, sir, that there's an imprint just to the right of the door. That would be my first area to do detailed photography and imaging, right, for later comparison.
And as you work your way back, are you careful not to step anywhere? You're wearing booties? What are you doing?
You're wearing the shoe cots or booties. In addition to that, we would usually build a bridge. Basically take two 2x4s, lay them in an area where there were no imprints, put a piece of plywood and actually stand on that so that you're not standing on the surface that the imprints are on. There are commercial products that are available that look like Tupperware boxes that you can literally stand on and do the same thing. So it preserves and protects the area that you're interested in doing the detailed work that you may be able to get more evidentiary information from.
And Michelle, we'll probably hear from
those photographs
the
all
prosecution.
The way back. What do you do next?
How much he's getting paid.
In this case, once the initial photographs were taken, determine if chemical processing is necessary or could I seize the item. In this case, it appears that these imprints are on a concrete base. It's a little difficult to take the entire concrete foundation and remove it, but it has been done before. In this case, again, now we work from the back towards the front using some type of enhancement reagent to try to increase the amount of detail and the clarity.
That agent is what you sprayed in New York on the floor. That
would be one of them, yes.
Does images that aren't visible to the naked eye.
Even if some of the image is visible, it can give you additional detail in the periphery or other area where there's just trace amounts.
Okay. And you work your way to the front, taking pictures as you spray?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, once you've finished that, are you done with the floor?
No, sir.
What's now? What do you do now?
You want to take overviews to show the work that you have done, right, and show any modifications that you made to the scene. And again, make the determination, can I take the area that print's on with me? If it was a tile floor, we could pull the tiles up. But again, because this is on concrete, we'd have to rely on the documentation.
And these are still 90-degree straight down shots?
That would be the analysis part. You would still take general photographs on an angle showing the relationship.
But as you worked your way up and worked your way back, those would be vertical, I mean...
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you're taking general photos from different angles?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then what?
With digital, you would make sure that the photos came out, that you had an image captured, and that it was sufficient for whoever needs.
Okay, now let's...
You would also take a sample of the blood from those areas for later typing or DNA analysis, should it be necessary.
Did you find any evidence that they took a sample of this blood and analyzed it?
No, sir.
So we surmise it's Paul's blood. It could be somebody else's blood there too?
Possible.
And the only way you could rule that out is take samples?
Is to take a sample, do an analysis, and try to identify the donor.
And that was never done?
To the best of my knowledge, no, sir.
Okay. So then we have a number of surfaces. Let me have them put up number 26, states 26. Okay, so, and just to cut to the chase, this is the door to the...
He said queso.
Well,
Just wanted
see
to
it a
point that
minute
out.
ago. There you go. That's the door to the feed room?
Yes, sir, the door frame on the right, door on the left.
Okay, did you see any evidence that they that's old-timey language, that they processed that door or any other surface in the feed room for fingerprints?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Now tell the jury, please, in a summary fashion, what you would have done. Well, first of all, do you have to see a fingerprint before you lift it or whatever you call that?
No, sir.
So how do you determine whether or not they're fingerprints you can't see? What do you do?
The base processing methods, again, depend on what technologies the agency has. The simplest and the oldest is dusting with a contrasting color fingerprint powder on a brush by just applying it to the surface and dusting it through. If a finger or palm or foot or toe has come in contact with those areas, the secretions from the ridge detail, right, leaves a pattern behind. Those latent fingerprints now become patent or visible. They can be lifted, they can be photographed. They also help tell you what was touched and how things were handled. So it would help in a reconstruction as well.
That's the oldest technology there is, though, right? The throwing dust down, fingerprint dust?
At a crime scene, yeah.
Okay. I'm not talking
That's
about
when
going into
technology
the
was
lab and
invented.
using
No.
super glue or whatever. Say, at the crime scene.
Yes, sir.
What is the more modern? Do you use lights or do you use chemicals? What do you do at the scene?
The first method would be to use an alternate light source.
What does that mean?
It could be
Alternate light
anything
source.
from a flashlight held at an oblique angle to see if you can find any smudges or smears. More sophisticated, portable laser units. All right, laser is an acronym for a light source that produces a wavelength of light at a very specific number. The more common today are called the alternate light sources. These are various colored lights, and usually they're light-emitting diodes or LEDs at different wavelengths of light. So in concert with a pair of glasses that are filtered, you can get a shift and you may be able to pick up fluorescence or luminescence. One of the problems is that our secretions, the oils, the fats, and the salts, don't reflect. They don't give off light. So you would need to process those, if you discovered one, with some type of chemical staining that would act as a fluorescent. And essentially, it would be similar to my watch, that when it's dark, it glows.
So are these new technologies, or, I mean, is something space-age stuff,
glowing
or has
watch.
it been around for a while?
The light source technology has become simpler and simpler. It's now battery powered. Literally, it's a very simplified flashlight. There are also very sophisticated ones. The technology's been around for about 25, almost 30 years.
Okay, and not uncommon to be available to law enforcement labs?
No, sir. I would expect every laboratory to have some type of alternate light source.
Okay,
And
now-
the oldest traditional is ultraviolet.
Ultraviolet's a black light?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so simple mobile black light you could look at.
Scanning the surface to see if it gives you any information.
Okay. And what if you didn't use the powder or the light, what else? What else could you do?
There's chemical fuming stains that you can use, and the simplest is super glue or cyanoacrylic acetate ester.
Can you do that on a scene?
With a door like that, if I chose to do that, literally you could bag the entire area, place a super glue packet or super glue with an accelerant in it inside the chamber, now inside the plastic bag, and fume the entire door. The other would be to take the door with you and process it
But that
later.
takes a while, doesn't it? The super glue process?
Not necessarily. Okay, half hour, 25 minutes.
Okay. And could you spray it with something else?
Again, the same reagents that we used on the footprints to make those visible, where there was limited amounts of blood-like material, could also be used there.
And you could do that on the door, you could do that on the door frame, you could do that on any object, the methods you've talked about, on any object, literally, in that room.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you see any evidence of any fingerprints, any effort to lift fingerprints, when I say lift, to identify fingerprints in that room or anywhere else on the property that night?
Again, not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Let me talk just for a minute about...
I want to know whose job it is to bring candy for Alex Murdaugh.
Here we go.
He obviously can't bring his own.
How about put...
Whose attorney is
steak
getting paid
195
$300 an
up,
hour to supply him with the candy he eats all day?
Okay, maybe, let's see if we can tune that in a little bit. There we go. Now, how about make it closer? No, the other way. Okay.
Here's Buster
Tell me what
back
this
there.
is, please.
A little further back
It
today.
appears to be a photograph of multiple footwear impressions, three-dimensional renderings in a soft surface.
Okay, and this picture was taken, do you remember who took it?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay. I may have a document here that'll help you with that. I can't remember. Let me suggest this just to cut the chase. You remember reading a statement concerning Solicitor Duffy Stone?
Yes, sir.
Is that picture taken by the solicitor?
I couldn't remember his name. I believe so.
Yes, okay. And it was taken on the night of June 7th.
That's the indication in the letter.
I believe that is Frodo.
So tell me what we're
Kyle.
looking at here.
It's Frodo.
Again, it's a soft soiled surface. Someone or some people have been walking through that area multiple times.
And did you attempt to identify any of those footprints by comparing them?
Just by looking at the basic pattern type, the flat surface ones that have relatively no detail, just the outline of the footwear itself, could be consistent with these sandals that Miss Murdaugh
Mag Murdaugh was wearing. What about these other shoes?
There were no exemplars that I was made aware of taken by SLED to do a comparison or to try to eliminate them.
Could you tell whether Maggie's shoes were walking over the other footprints or were the other footprints walking over her imprints?
If those are from Maggie's sandals, they're on top of the other ones. But they're also going in two directions, and some are superimposed over the other.
When you say, okay, let me ask the question this way. Are Maggie's imprints on top of the other imprints, or are they on top of hers?
In the area that they appear, yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
In the
It was an
area
either or.
in which
Yes.
they appear, the answer is yes.
Yes.
They were.
They were
They
what?
were made there after, right? The
On
heavy
top, are
lug
they on
pad.
top of Maggie's?
He
No,
has to be
Maggie's
either
are
or.
on top.
Okay, so the other imprints were there and Maggie walked on top of them.
We need a protractor and a
Apparently, yes.
thermometer here.
Okay.
Stat.
Now,
Let's figure out exactly what we're talking about.
let me see if I can save us some time here.
Yeah, you can. You can say no further questions. That would save a ton of time. I'm not sure we're gaining a lot from this witness. I do want to see the cross, though. I want to see how they do this. Thank you for all the protractors.
Well, you have also reviewed the SLED procedures manual, correct? Parts of it.
In brief, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, and let me ask you this. There's certain certifications different labs receive, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the certification SLED receives for their lab, there's an acronym?
The current acronym is ANAB, A-N-A-B.
Okay.
It's the American Board of A-N-A accreditation. I forget the last word.
Okay.
But it's a pickup from an older accreditation program that was run under the ASCLD program, the American Society of Crime Lab Director.
And tell me just briefly how that accreditation program works.
A laboratory or a crime scene unit can apply to this organization for this national actually it's international accreditation, which means that they're meeting a minimum criteria and minimum expectations from the parent body, right? It's a formal recognition, technically, that you're doing a good job, or at least your procedures are well written. The operation manual that I started reviewing was very thorough, was very well written, very easy to understand, but it involves everything from how evidence is processed in the agency, what the responsibilities of the different people are, including the director of the laboratory, the basic procedures and operation of the lab itself, or the crime scene unit, if it's involved in a police department that may not have a formal laboratory. The accreditation is well recognized across the country, and
so they certify that you're meeting the standards, basically.
that you're following the guidelines that you've put, and your guidelines meet a minimum standard, yes.
Okay. So, and have you ever performed these analyses? Have you ever been appointed or assigned by this group to do this?
Yes, sir.
To
Under ASCLD, the precursor to ANAP, I was also one of their auditors, and we would go to different laboratories. In fact, I did the Columbia Sheriff's Department a number of years ago.
Richland County, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Sheriff's
sir.
Department.
I forget.
So
He forgets details.
you're very familiar with what the standards are.
Yes, sir.
In reviewing what this file and these pictures and documents, was SWED following the procedures that are required by that certification on this case?
What I had for procedures were their operation manual, how to run the laboratory and the functionalities. There's also a second set of documents called the technical documents for each one of the sections that would further in detail give you the information of how to do things, and as an example, recipes for chemical processing, right? How to put the chemicals together, how to apply them.
Well, they didn't apply any chemicals here.
Again, I didn't see those technical
According to the
procedures.
records, okay. I guess what I'm saying is, and maybe the easiest way to just get that down to the generic, did they do what they were supposed to do under these standards at this crime scene for most things? Maybe they did some things that we're not aware of, but for instance, you looked at a number of foot impressions, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're required to do the 90 degree and then from different directions, right?
In a best case scenario, yes.
Did you see any footwear or foot impression that was taken that way?
No, sir.
Okay, all of them were from an angle?
Yes, sir.
And once you do that, are they suitable? I think we even saw,
Objection to lead. Can't lead the witness.
to any of those photographs, no, which of
Strike
any
that.
of those photographs met the standards required to do a comparison?
None of the ones from around the victims or in the small shed area.
Okay. How many, if any, had that 90-degree on a tripod, if you will, shot? How many?
None of them.
Okay.
He surrendered.
And as a result
came out
of
the
that,
house.
were any of them suitable for forensic comparison?
They were suitable for pattern identification, the gross pattern, but not as far as the detailed individualizing accidental characteristic that might be present.
Okay. Based on the reports we have, what effort, if any, was made to take fingerprints at the scene?
None that I observed.
Okay. Does that conduct, either for the footprints or the fingerprints, meet the standards that you use or anybody else is using when they try to evaluate?
Objection.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the objection.
I said anybody else uses. Objection.
Any other department uses, any agency uses, any evaluating agency uses.
There was much more work that could have been done.
Okay. Did they do a terrible job here? He's an expert, I can ask an opinion.
I don't know what their limitations were, and I don't know what the training of the people doing the crime scene processing was. So
I'm not asking you the limitations. Looking at it, did they do a terrible job here? Did they do a less, terrible is the wrong word. Let me get it more scientific. an adequate job to show the absence of, at the minimum, the absence of any other evidence? They do an adequate job to
I don't
eliminate.
believe so.
What?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And that's your expert opinion?
Correct.
Okay.
That much more could have been done.
Okay. And much more being done might have uncovered additional evidence that would have exculpated Alec Murdaugh, helped prove he's innocent, correct?
Objection.
Leading.
Basis for the objection.
Speculation.
On response.
Your Honor, it's what, I mean, the key here is the absence of evidence. And certainly the absence of evidence, if there was evidence they could have uncovered that they'd done this process right, it would have helped at the minimum prove there was another person that did this crime.
Speaking response, if you have one.
He's testifying in addition to speculation.
Well, he is testifying.
The objection is sustained.
Thank you. Beg the court's indulgence one moment.
Poot will putter back over to the desk. Let's see what happens here. Alex is rethinking. They're like, I got nothing. I got nothing. You're on your own.
Questions?
Okay, here we go.
Cross-examination.
Cross. Let's see who it's going to be. It's always going to be touchy-feely. Right? Come up and get a good feel. Get a feel for the witness, and then let's get down to business. I do like this judge. Alex Murdaugh, he does have a box, like the lid for a banker's box in front of his computer screen. It's pretty much stayed there for most of trial. There are very few things he watches.
Good afternoon, sir.
Some exhibits he will, but not pictures.
Wouldn't you have loved to have been Laura Rutland?
I'm not sure who Laura Rutland is.
You don't know who Laura Rutland is?
No, sir.
Laura Rutland is. It's repetitive.
Mr. Harpootlian asked you if you, and maybe I think he told you, you had read all the records in this case, and you said yes. Remember?
These are
No,
subtle
sir. I've been
jabs.
qualifying that each time he stated it.
I'm sorry. Do what?
I have been qualifying that question each time he said that.
Well,
The records that were made available to me,
okay.
the entire case jacket was not made available.
So tell these folks what was made available to you.
Photographs from the coroner's office that were taken apparently by a photographer representing them at the scene. Photographs, I believe, were taken by SLED or an investigative agency. Later, I was the recipient of 4 images. Now that I know were taken by the state, well, we call them state's attorneys, district attorney. Copies of the autopsy report, some of SLED's investigative reports, such as the fingerprint section, which actually also did the footwear the footwear examinations. Let's see. I was given access to the operations manual for SLED, right, and the letter that I just referred to as far as the origin of some of the photographs.
So you have not read all the records in this case?
Correct.
And you don't know who Laura Rutland is?
No, sir, I don't.
Would it be important for somebody, well, let me ask you this much. When did you get all that, the reports and the pictures from, when did you receive those in your possession?
Some of them as long as 2 months ago, 3 months ago, others today.
And I spent the weekend looking through some of your background.
Yes, sir.
You provide reports in a lot of cases, don't you?
Yes, sir, I do.
Written reports?
Yes, sir.
What you do, what your findings were, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you do that in most cases, don't you?
Yes, sir.
but not
Did
this
you do
one.
a report in this case?
It was not requested.
Okay, well, so are you taking notes, and are you just doing all that from memory up there?
Testimony so far has been more about procedural issues and the specifics of things that I've already reviewed.
I understand that, but that wouldn't answer my question respectfully. Have you done a report for yourself?
Do I have notes that I was taking? Yes. Do I
You
have
have
copies
those?
of the, do I have them with me?
Yes, sir.
Strictly what's on my computer,
You going to provide those to me?
if you wish.
Entitled to reports, not his notes. He's not entitled to Brady. He's not entitled to anything but a report under Rule 5, and there is no such thing.
Your Honor, he just said if you wish. He just told me I could
I
have
didn't
them.
ask for argument. The objection is overruled.
You said I can look at them?
They're not physically here, but whatever I have at another location, you're more than welcome to.
You said you had them on your computer.
Not all the handwritten notes, right? Any of the documentation I was given was by virtue of digital copies.
But you have something on your computer up there. You actually motioned toward it.
Please?
You have some on your computer up there. You
Not the
motioned
actual
toward it.
notes, no. I have the actual documents I received to review. The handwritten notes or any of the notations on images or photographs are at another location.
Here we have another computer
When did you
circus.
prepare? We got the
The
PowerPoint
witness.
last night about 10 o'clock. When did you prepare that?
Which one?
Was there more than one?
There were two.
Where's the other one?
They were both shown.
Those were two PowerPoints?
There were two separate ones, yes. I take it back. I was mistaken.
You're what? What'd you just say?
I said I was mistaken.
Okay.
There was one PowerPoint. There were two sections to it.
Oh my goodness.
When did you provide that?
Probably a week ago.
And you just said you were mistaken. You have made mistakes in your life, haven't you?
Yes, sir. I have an eraser on my pencil.
And I'm old school, you're old school, and I don't mean that bad.
Thank you.
And when you were around investigating crime scene years ago, you didn't wear booties every time you were on a crime scene.
When I started doing crime scenes, they weren't part of the equipment.
So
As
my answer-
technology has come along, the fear of contamination, they become standard operating procedures.
But you have not always wore foot protection when you were on a crime scene, have you?
Going back 20, 30, 40 years ago, no, sir.
And you made mistakes before.
As everyone in this room, yes.
Yes, sir. Well, as you just did a minute ago, too. Can I pull up one, whoever's, are you helping us? You mind?
Doug?
Would you pull up something for me?
Use his name. His name is Doug.
195, please.
He's one of the hardest working
If you're
guys in
not-
the
if you're not-
courtroom.
if I can't- This 195?
You can put it on the envelope. We can't.
Red pen. Touche.
Thank you, I didn't mean to.
You can go a great ways in life just learning people's names and using them. And Doug has been here day in and day out. The least they can do is use his name as he's doing all the hard work for them, because I promise none of them know how to run this Elmo. Doug is the only one in the courtroom
When
that can.
Mr. Harpootlian asked you about states 195,
Yes, sir.
and it's important when these footprints were put on here, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And you know who first saw those footprints?
No, sir.
You don't, that's right. It's Laura Rutland. Would it have been important to you to come in, and you're basically second guessing the Colleton County Sheriff's Department, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division? Well, you're being paid to come in and say they did a bad job, aren't you?
I even qualified that answer. Depending on the limitations of their skill sets, depending on the limitations of equipment that they have in their training, they may have done the best job they could.
But you're second guessing the Colleton County Sheriff's Department and SLED and saying they did a bad job, did you?
With that particular image,
Well, no, you've said it about the whole thing.
Have you finished your answer? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
are you referring to this image or the
Right now,
entire?
okay, yes, sir.
As far as that picture goes, it's a good general overview documentation of an area. Without additional photographs, which I know there were 4 in the series if I'm not mistaken. All right. It does show this area in concert with a portion of the crime scene. That can be equated back to one of the diagrams that was prepared. This particular picture is a medium close-up showing a particular area, as I tried to explain with the photography, showing multiple images and how they relate to one another. The other photograph would show how it relates to the scene. The part that's missing are the macro or the close-up photographs.
There are a lot of chicken
showing the detail of the
imprints
images
there.
So that should a pair of shoes or article of footwear be available, they could then be directly compared and analyzed and either included or excluded from consideration in the case.
And if you had a witness, let me just ask, if you're giving an opinion up here and evaluating the crime scene, wouldn't you want to know if there was a witness who saw this image when they were just the sandals on it? Wouldn't you want to know that if you were evaluating, second guessing whether a law enforcement did a good job? Wouldn't you want to know that?
It would be helpful, but that's not what I was presented with.
You weren't even presented with that.
I was presented with a photograph and asked to interpret what's there.
But if there's a witness who said, I saw those and they were just those sandal prints and nothing else there, you'd want to know that.
First off, I'm not an investigator. I don't do interviews. I don't talk to people about what they did or saw. As a scientist, you evaluate the information that you're given to work with insofar as possible. These images have very limited value for analysis. How they got there, I don't know. An article of footwear came in contact with that surface, as I explained, and left an impression, a three-dimensional image. As far as who was there, how many people walked through, I don't know. I was not at the scene at the time of the incident, nor have I ever been to the crime scene.
You've never even been in the crime scene?
Correct.
I mean, isn't that important if you're going...
Not for the limited purpose that I was asked to look at the evidence. And as the time had elapsed, there's no way to go back to a scene that occurred 2 years ago and try to interpret evidence that probably no longer exists.
And will you just please answer this one question?
Yes, sir.
If there was information from an individual who saw this scene on June 7th, 21, that when she saw it, there were nothing but the sandal prints and nothing else, wouldn't you want to know that?
Again, as a scientist, I can only deal with what's put in front of me. I avoid witness statements because of their unreliability.
An eyewitness who said, I just saw sandals, you wouldn't want to know that?
I would not care.
Would you care
I'm
if
looking-
you were a beat cop? If you just saw sandals yourself?
I was not a scientist at that point. I was not subject to biased accusations, all right, and undue influence from others.
You talking about Mr. Harpootlian or me?
Both.
Okay. And the reason I'm following up on that, and I wasn't clear, Mr. Harpootlian said, were these over other imprints or over? They're actually over each other. The sandals are over themselves, the imprints, correct?
I said that, yes.
Okay. Well, it wasn't clear. You're not saying they were over these other.
It may not have been clear to Mr. Meadows. It was clear to me. It was clear to everybody else in the court.
I also stated that they're on top.
Objection is sustained.
Objection.
The objection is sustained. Examination by the counsel. Cross-examination, not direct examination.
And finally on this topic, Mr. Harpootlian said that these photos were taken on June 7th of 2021, and that's what you thought, correct? That's what you were provided.
The appearance from the letter that was, I believe, attached to those images gave that indication, yes.
Okay. And did it say what? Beg court's notice.
Penny for your thoughts, sir.
Taken on June 8th, 2023, later that day. Did you know that?
Apparently, the person who authored the letter authenticating the photograph was inaccurate.
See what's marked states 565, Mr. Zersi.
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize those?
Yes, sir, I do.
Your Honor, without objection, 565.
No objection, Your Honor.
Admitted without objection.
Now, Mr. Zersi, looking at, I think it states 139, and this now states 565, using common sense, are those consistent with this?
It's the nature of objection.
He's an expert
The legal
witness.
basis for the objection.
The legal basis is he's applying the wrong standard, common sense. He's a scientist. He can make a comparison scientifically.
The objection is overruled.
In general pattern design,
He did not.
this pair of sandals possibly made the smooth imprints that appear in the picture. However, I cannot tell you size, right, or individual patterns, as the images here, again, were not recorded properly, if that's what they were.
Okay.
There are similarities to basic pattern design to these shoes.
Okay. And you'd have said that, and I'm sorry, you'd have said that as a beat cop 40 years ago, and same thing right now today, wouldn't you?
Except now I have to do it as an expert witness, which is much different.
And now I get paid a lot more to say it. Touchy-feely was getting right up there, ready to put his hands on it.
Yes, sir.
How much are you getting paid an hour?
Here we go.
The base fee was $350 an hour,
I'm sorry?
$350 an hour.
That's the base.
Yes, sir.
Do you get paid for travel?
Yes, sir.
How much?
This time, strictly the airfare.
Okay. You don't get paid while you're traveling?
No, I'm not charging for time.
You usually do?
Again, depends on the circumstances.
And you know I gotta ask this.
That's okay.
Do you get paid more for sitting in that chair than you do for not being? Inside the courtroom, testimony costs more than outside?
It's the same fee.
$350.
It's a basic 10-hour charge for testimony.
And how many hours have you logged so far?
Total 20 plus today and, the travel. But I'm not charging for the travel time.
And is there extra charge for the PowerPoint?
No, sir. It's all part of the examination.
Is the report included as well? Beg the court's indulgence. Any further questions for the witness? Big Alex looks more nervous than small Alex. I agree, Evan. I hate that question. I mean, half of me wants to know just because I'm curious what they're earning, but I hate it. It sounds so slimy. Yeah, $3,500, the base fee for testimony, minimum 10 hours. That's what he charges, flat rate. Minimum 10 hours plus $350 per hour over 10. I wonder if it's a minimum 10 hour per day. I don't think this is the last expert. I think they had 5 or 6 experts. We've only had a handful of them. I think we've got at least one more, possibly 2. Do we need to stand up and stretch, do a little more yoga?
They're multiples of the same one. Some are multiples of the same print.
I'm going to show you what's marked. States 559 and 558. Mr. Searcy, do you recognize those?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Your Honor, 558 and 559 without objection?
Without objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
560 and 561, Mr. Searcy, do you recognize those?
Yes, sir, I do.
Your Honor, 560 and 561 without objection?
No objection, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
$564?
Yes, sir, I do.
564 without objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
566?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying yes, sir, that means you recognize them? And
Yes, sir.
566 without objection?
Without objection, Your Honor.
And 557?
Yes, sir.
557 without objection, Your Honor.
Without objection.
You're admitted.
562 and 563.
Yes, sir, I'm familiar with this report and this one.
Your Honor, 562 and 563 without objection.
Without objection, Your Honor.
You're admitted.
Stacks of evidence being admitted right now. DMB, you cannot listen in high fidelity.
No problem.
Mr. Zersey, 5-6, well, I'll stand back here so everybody can hear, sorry. 556 and 564 are pictures of Paul's shoes and Alex's shoes, correct?
There are photographs taken at the laboratory of the two articles that you mentioned by ownership, apparently.
Okay. Who've been identified as Paul and Alex's shoes?
Okay, yes.
Yeah. And then, what are these, 561 and 560?
Depending on the methodology that was used, either placing a slurry of ink on the bottom of the shoe, rolling it onto a contrasting surface, i.e. a piece of paper, of both, you have a set of the left and two sets of the right shoe, all right, to try to record any of the detail that would show in a two-dimensional impression when the shoe comes in contact with the surface.
And that's 589 and 559, I believe, are the right shoe, and 560 and 561 are the left shoe of Alex Murdaugh. Would you disagree with that?
No.
Okay. And that's good to do, isn't it?
Yes.
No question about that.
It's part of the examination process.
Take a picture of the soles,
Photograph the items,
do an imprint.
life-size, not as represented in those pictures, but yes.
Because you're trying to see if they're characteristics, correct?
If you have something to compare them to, yes.
Class first.
There's 5 criteria: size, shape, wear, pattern, manufacturing, and the final one is individual. The accidental cuts, scratches, gouges, or residue that may be stuck in the bottom of the shoe that would leave a pattern behind.
The dog poop.
General class, and then see if you got some kind of individual defect, or I pronate, so that would show on my shoe, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir. And if you supernated, it would too.
Say what? Super, I got you, my bad, I didn't hear you.
Has to do with the way the foot flexes at the ankle.
I understand, I didn't hear you. In 198, 199, the RDN evidence, would you dispute that these were the right and left of Paul?
I think he's like a size 13
They
or
were
something.
shown to me as representative of that, yes.
And that's good.
Yes.
I mean, that's good law enforcement.
That's part of the examination process, yes, sir.
We can go through everything SLED did
And
right
what's now been admitted into evidence, SLED's report by Special Agent Worley, 2 reports, one more detailed than the other, where she basically gave her conclusions about looking at these footwear impressions, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you can't disagree with anything that she came up with, can you?
No, in fact, I agree with her comments about the limitations that were placed on her to do the analysis.
Pretty good examination, wasn't it?
I have no problem with it.
You have no problem with it?
No, sir. In regards to the limitations that were placed on her.
But she tried.
Yes, sir.
And they tried.
Yep.
And they took pictures.
And the pictures that were taken made it difficult, if not impossible, as she states in her report, to draw a positive conclusion in one direction or another, to only be able to give a class characteristic of basic pattern design.
She wasn't basically 90 degrees over it, but the picture was there, still there, correct?
Pardon?
She could still compare these to a picture, couldn't she?
As far as general pattern characteristics, yes.
And I think Mr. Harpootlian showed you some of these. They're out of order, beg of course, indulgence. An inked impression and overlay of item 103 shoes, which I think you and I have identified were Paul's shoes, correct?
If that's the number that's on the shoe, yes.
Okay. And she compared those to the digital photos, and I think, well, they're in here, this is 38, it's got 105.1. You remember looking at these?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And 105.2 and 105.3 inside the feed room?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And 105.5.
Oh, you're crazy.
105.1, right here. And did she make that mark and put it on there, 105.5, 105.1?
Yes.
Okay. And again, that states 38. What'd she
Again,
say?
to the best of my knowledge, she made that mark.
I understand. What did she conclude about that?
If I could have a report, I'd be happy to read it.
Here.
Either her report or her work notes, either one.
How about if I hand you this? I ain't got enough room in here, I'm sorry.
This is from her examination worksheets. Under the
105.1.
Under the accreditation, these notes would have been taken contemporaneous with the examination that she was conducting. All right, now there may be a typed transcript of those. And could you repeat which section again?
You got my mark calculated.
There's a mark on 103.2. And you have an underlined section on 105.1.
105.1. You read my underlined section, please.
Strictly that out of context?
No, you read it all. I didn't mean that. You read everything you want. Tell them about what she did. Tell her everything.
No, this is what Agent Worley did. From her examination worksheet dated 6/23/2021, all right, regarding reliability tested, not applied, all right, examination notes, subsection section 105 for item 105.1. Unknown footwear impression in photograph number 0139. Each photograph that was taken has a specific number assigned to it by the digital cameras, so you can go back to that specific image. Near the feed room door threshold. This would be, to me, it's closest to the entryway itself. The item 105, unknown footwear impression, consists of partial impressions and suspected blood on a cement floor. The outsole design consists of at least 4 rows of parallel rectangular blocks. One block is in a row by itself and appears to be 2 blocks that are joined together, forming more of a V or a U shape. Due to the amount of suspected blood, right, in the impression, it is difficult to determine if those or any of the blocks that appear to be joined together are actually joined in the design, or if the volume of suspected blood is masking the separation of the joints. The sentence with the underlined section: overall, the item 105.1, unknown footwear impression, is consistent with the outsole design of the item 103 right shoe.
That's consistent with Paul's shoe, correct? Assuming Paul's shoe is 103.
It's consistent with that one that's represented, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, this is her opinion.
I understand.
All right, specifically, the unknown impressions appear to be consistent with the second through the sixth rows of the toe end of the outsole. There is barely a noticeable difference between the design of the left and the right shoe. However, there is a slight variation in the slant of the blocks, especially in the middle row of the impression. Additionally, it is the photograph where, if the photographs were true to size, there is an outline of the blocks that would align with the fifth row of the toe end of the shoe, which is obscured in item 103, left shoe, but is clearly visible in the right shoe. Due to the quantity...
I've listened to some audiobooks that sound just like this. Unfortunately, I've never got through the first chapter of
a
any
more
of them.
meaningful conclusion cannot be rendered. The item 21 and 95, right, have been eliminated based on the outsole design.
So,
those would be Paul's shoes and Maggie's.
So she found that that was consistent with Paul's shoe, correct?
Based on her opinion, yes.
Okay. And I'm not going to go through every one of these, but I would just want to briefly go through. Did she also, on the 105-2 footwear impression,
He's just going to dry out all the times that that Sled did the right thing.
say that Paul's shoes were consistent?
And continues, the lack of clarity in the impression makes it difficult to determine if it was made by the left or the right shoe. Therefore, a more meaningful conclusion cannot be reached. And they were eliminated.
It's consistent, correct? The lack of clarity make it difficult to determine a more meaningful, but it's consistent, right? They weren't eliminated. Why'd you say that?
I read the next line.
Yeah, but that's item 21 and 95.
Correct.
You were trying to imply that.
No, I wouldn't do that.
You made a mistake?
No.
Well, you said they
The
were
last-
eliminated.
Your Honor, object to him standing up, badgering this witness next to him. He can read it. He can comment from back here. He's in the doorway, but again, I object.
For clarity.
This moment.
He's been
The
up here
objection is to you standing in the doorway.
He's been standing up here the whole
No.
time. Aimed a gun at us yesterday from here.
Mom!
He aimed a gun at us from here yesterday.
Good for the goose, good for the gander is a rule, and I can't find it in my rule book.
Well, we're operating with limited space. Just as a matter of trial procedures, extremely unusual for counsel to stand in the locations where counsel have been standing throughout the trial. But given the limited space, it's somewhat understandable. But he has moved to the podium. Go right ahead.
Did you misspeak just then?
I did. All right, the last sentence states, the items 21 and 95, the other two articles of footwear, are eliminated based on their outsole design.
But Paul's wasn't eliminated.
In a very basic way. And because, again, by her report, by what she reports as the contamination issues, right, blood seeping into other areas, the detail is not there to be definitive. Also, there is no rendering of the size of the image from any of the crime scene photographs. Could it be this big, or could it be this big? I can't eliminate based on size.
Yeah, it was a 2-foot shoe, I'm pretty sure.
And if we could go to 105.3, and I'll stay back here and left you a copy there, and I've got a copy.
Yes, sir.
That's an unknown footwear impression represented.
Your Honor, I wish you could tell us what exhibit he's looking. No, I mean, what exhibit you just handed him? What did you just hand him?
To the report that you didn't object to.
I don't object to it, I just don't want to know what it is.
It's photograph 29.
It's 1562.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Wow. This sounds like, Mom, he's breathing my air. That's what it sounds like. The kids back and forth. It was the 5'2" naked robots with clown shoes.
I forgot where we were.
105.3.
Thank you. Under 105.3, can you tell me, which is comparing, I'm looking now in states 40, and do you see 105.3 in states 40, and did you review that when you were evaluating this case? And
I read the reports and matched photographs up to the scene, yes. Or the reports. Whoops, sorry.
And did Agent Worley conclude that item 105.3 unknown footwear impression is consistent with the outsole design of item 103 right shoe? Did she conclude that?
I just,
Oh, I didn't read it. I picked it up, but it's still up there, sorry.
it cannot be,
105.3.
it just says it cannot be excluded.
Did she say impression is consistent with the outside design of 103 right shoe? In the
Although-
second paragraph.
And continuing, although there is minimal amount of detail observed in item 103, right shoe cannot be excluded due to the basic design and structure. Again, the limited amount of detail made a very qualified findings. The other part, continuing on with this document and her final report, they all indicate that there could be no size comparison. And again, there's no way to determine that.
But she tried.
She tried the best she could, yes.
And going on down, 105.4, there was an unknown impression represented on the back of Maggie's leg.
Yes, sir.
I don't even know if he talked about it, but I'm going to 541.
Yes, sir.
What did she say about that? What were her findings?
I believe that she couldn't do anything with it.
Although there's a definite pattern visible, it cannot be definitively determined if the impression is a footwear impression or if it was created by some other object, right?
Correct.
And you agree with that?
Yes.
And the only thing she said it was kind of consistent with was the fabric portion of item 95 sandals that couldn't be excluded. And those are Maggie sandals, right? We don't know what it is, right?
Correct.
He goes walking
Sandals,
up to him.
Could be that, could be anything.
could be a tire on an ATV.
Possible.
And let's keep going, we're almost through 105.5. And is that comparing the shoes with 557?
He keeps trying to walk
She's
up
been
there,
offered-
like to
What
help
is
him read or
557?
something.
Okay.
105.5, 105.6, you've looked at this.
The area behind the door, yes, sir.
You've looked at that.
This witness is confirming what we've heard all along, and that
Overall, the item
SLED made mistakes in
105.5,
processing the scene.
unknown footwear, corresponds with the outsole design of item what right shoe?
Item 103.
That's Paul's.
Again, these are class identifications. There is very limited detail.
And let's go to the final one here, 105.6. Unknown footwear impression, too partial to determine if it was made by the square diamond pattern of one of the item 21 shoes. Therefore, no conclusion could be rendered. Item 105.6, unknown footwear impression was not made by 95 and 103.
Yes, sir.
She examined every footwear, every one of these, correct? She being Agent Worley?
According to her report, yes, sir.
Took pictures of them,
That's a good job,
imprints
too.
of them,
Huh?
Yes, sir.
compared them.
Yes, sir, insofar as she could.
And came up with a report.
Again, I was not requested to write a report.
That was a little jab.
You don't even have a report.
Correct, sir. I've said that 3 times.
I'm okay with some aggressive questioning. I think both sides have taken it too far with the shouting and the pointing and the dramatic, all the theater, courtroom theater, I guess. But raising and lowering your voice and, the storytelling aspect of that is going to bring the jury along.
You have no idea if everything else they didn't provide you was done
The
100%
touchy-feely?
correctly.
I'm
No,
not
sir.
okay with.
Thank you, that's all.
Yeah, very, very briefly. Let me see if I can do this in less than 5 minutes. He asked you.
Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Counting down.
There's a photograph up here he asked
Okay.
about.
Let's do this,
In the
Poot.
sand with impressions, shoe impressions, right?
Yes, sir.
So if this Laura Rutten person that saw this earlier said, all she saw were sandals when she got to the crime scene, and then there were impressions over those sandals, would that indicate that somebody in some way spoiled or affected the crime scene that arrived after the police did, or with the police, or were the police?
After the observation, yes.
Is that something encouraged in these policies and procedures, to actually walk over footprints in the crime scene?
The primary redress at any scene is to protect the evidence, whatever it might be.
Was that protected?
I don't know.
It would appear if one officer saw just sandal impressions, and then after that, there were footprints on it, it's not protected.
Objection to leading.
Can't lead the witness.
We'll move on. So you were asked if Agent Worley did all she could do, and you said she tried.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, she tried with, she even says that the impressions, the pictures of the impressions are inadequate, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's because they didn't follow the simple procedures you've been doing for the last and most police departments have done for the last 2 or 3 decades, right?
And has been taught for a number of years.
No tripod, no direct angle. And let me ask you this. I believe we've asked this before, but if she had done what you did in that New York crime scene and sprayed a chemical.
Objection, Your Honor.
I don't know if you-
Heard the question.
I haven't finished. So, if she had sprayed the chemical we saw in the pictures that you had in your PowerPoint from New York, what, if any, difference could that have made?
If there was a blood-like substance present, and more especially in and around the partial prints that were visible, it could give you additional detail and further enhance the pattern design and hopefully give you individualizing characteristics for comparison at a later date. The difficulty with this whole case is I can't tell you when those prints were put there.
You can't tell me what?
I cannot tell you when those prints were there. The only comment that you can make is sometime prior to the time the photographs were taken, the print was placed there.
Okay. And this technology of using that spray is decades old also?
Yes, sir, it is.
So you said she tried. Could she have tried harder? Could she have tried better? Could she have used the techniques that have been around for 20 or 30 years to make sure there wasn't the perpetrator's bloody footprint in the feed room? Could she have done that?
She or someone with their investigative group that would be qualified to do that.
Okay. And he asked you a series of questions, went on for 10 minutes about, she compared this.
Objection.
The objection is sustained. As to the comment,
Were you asked about a series of report with a series of comparisons of pictures with different known shoe impressions?
Yes, sir.
And I believe you indicate that now if there was a match, what word would be used? Would it be consistent or would it be something stronger?
It depends on the type of analysis and the amount of information that you could call or get from it.
Do you ever say this shoe made that impression?
In an all better world with proper individualizing characteristic and the 5 criteria that I mentioned before, you could reach that conclusion.
Okay, but she says consistent.
Correct.
That's not that shoe made that impression. It's that shoe could have made that impression.
That shoe or any other pattern similar to that could have made it.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Hey, he did it.
Mr. Meadows.
He did it.
PowerPoint
Hey Siri, show timer.
said that Marco Maggie was consistent with the shoe. Did you do another PowerPoint?
I've done several.
You've done several?
He had 25
Yes,
seconds
sir.
to spare.
Chose not to use them.
They chose not to use them.
And now let Murdaugh stole it.
You may step down.
Bone Digger's like, someone owes me a Bitcoin.
We'll take a little break. If you go to the jury room, please do not discuss the case.
Okay, a little bit spicier there. Just a teensy bit spicier. I wonder if the judge is going to sort of reprimand him. They're sort of getting out of control. There's a back and forth that's a little too much. The heated jabs, the subtle jabs is what it started with. It started with the cross immediately. I forget the second comment the Mr. Touchy did when he started his cross on this one was a little bit of a jab at Poot. Poot responded back in kind. He was like, yeah, you asked for 10 minutes about this type thing. They're not allowed to do that. It was, yes, Ann says, both sides have sniped at each other during this trial. Unprofessional. I wonder if the judge is going to address that here. Stretch time for Newman. Let's see. Oh, Alex is like, oh, I didn't know it was stretch time for me too. Let's see. It looks like everybody's probably getting a little bit of a break. I don't know. I missed the announcement on how much of a break, so probably about 10 to 15 minutes. And Alex, stand up like everybody else. Yes, this is your chance. Yeah, they are doing your job. They're doing what they're supposed to do, but they're trying to push it to try to win points, and it's almost like they're making it personal. Which I don't think either of them have the affections of the jury in their pocket. You know, they're not endeared to the jury to the degree where the jury's like, yeah, get him type thing. The jury, I think, is pretty impartial as they're watching this and listening, and they probably don't appreciate the distraction this is causing. Why is it offensive that the state is forceful? No offense, defense, nasty attitude. They're both offensive. I think they're both offensive. I think we expect the state to be forceful with an expert witness. It's almost. I mean, this is across almost all the trials we watch. When defense brings in their own expert to counter the evidence of the crime scene professionals or the experts that have been testifying for the state, those are witnesses that are safe targets because they're professionals, because they're paid to do this. You know, they have training, expertise, a lot of experience. They typically get hit harder with questions, with the attacks, with the raising of the voice and stuff like that, to try to throw them off their rhythm and their sort of their groove as far as that goes. Whereas you can't do that with Buster. You put Buster on the stand. He knows all these facts like everybody else. He's listened to this from the get-go. I mean, he's knows a lot of these details intimately. But you can't put him up on the stand and have a state prosecutor just rip into him like they do on these expert witnesses, because yeah, no, it would not be funny. It would not be funny. The jury would look at that and look at the attorney and say, this guy's a jerk. Why is he treating him like that? You know what he's been through type thing. This is not somebody who wants to be here, who chose this line of work and said, this is my profession. I'm going to sit here in court and I'm going to testify for $350 an hour. And I'm going to, be an expert in everything I do in detail. They're not like that. Buster's not like that. So he's not a target. So we expect a little bit more heated stuff on the expert witnesses, and I'm okay with that. There's, to some degree, you get that as well with law enforcement as they testify. But at the same time, I think the personal nature of this is a little too much. And Matthew Harris says, the judge said a little break, and then he sent the jury to the jury room, didn't say what time we'd be back. Okay, so I didn't miss it. I was worried I'd talked over it or something. Alec looks concerned today. Perhaps he will testify. Michelle, I do believe that's on his mind. I do believe he probably has not made up his mind fully. He probably has a good idea of what he wants to do, but it sure would be a lot easier for him to make a decision if the judge had ruled to limit the scope of the cross-examination, which I don't think will happen. A few of you have sent me some things and rules to educate me a little bit on the as the right of the witness to plead the fifth, and the fact that they lose that when they agree to testify. So, yeah, I think he wants to testify, but now is worried that he can't testify. Denise says, can you update me on this witness? I've been in a meeting since the afternoon session started. Denise, this is a quadruple threat witness. He was counted as accepted as an expert in 4 different areas: footprints, tire track analysis. Oh man, I forget the third, but one of them was like in crime scene overall procedures and critiquing investigations. So I forget what 3 of them are, or what one of them is. But so he's got these 4 areas of expertise where he's really just been poking at holes in the prosecution's case where SLED made a mistake, where the investigator, whoever was taking the pictures of the evidence, didn't do as good a job as they should. Maybe their standards, they should have used a tripod, they held the camera freehand. They should have taken a picture directly from over, exactly 90 degrees above, looking down, one of those tripods with an arm that comes out and looks down. They should have done that. They didn't. And so they're poking holes at all this and saying, if they had done that, then we could use these pictures and we could, compare the sizes, and there should have been, measurements and things like that they didn't do. So they're just saying, here's all the things they did wrong. With all these mistakes, you can't trust the conclusions they came to. That's what we're doing. The state obviously is defending quite forcefully any allegation that the results from the investigators are anything other than acceptable. So both sides are very unethical. It was a little bit spicy. I do like spicy. Spicy keeps me awake, but at the same time, part of me wants it to just be sheer wit. I want to have an attorney that can question somebody in a respectful manner and get them to talk themselves into a corner where they have to admit, I was wrong. I would love that. I'd like to logically see somebody walk somebody into a corner and make them admit, if they are wrong, that they are wrong. I hate that the way that attorneys will do this, where they say yes or no this type thing, and it's like, okay, yes, they have the right to do that. You can limit your question to a yes or no and require the judge, or ask the judge to require the witness to give a yes or no answer if they're able to answer that way. But I think they abuse that. I think that's like a crutch they rely on instead of being able to actually logically talk them into a corner. And it's wit against wit. The suit is his, but he lost weight in jail. Talking about Alex. This particular witness, the tie is amazing. If I could find one like that, I would, I think, invest in it. Maybe I'd like a whole suit out of the material his tie's in. I think it is actual mermaid skin or dragon scale. I snorted there as I thought about that. That was funny. Don't clip that, anybody. I dislike the prosecution more than the defense, especially today. I have some questions about coins. Can I ask you? Sure. Fire away, Maui Bell. So Alex is going to be in a cage for the rest of his life. Puzzleman, it's looking like that. He has a lot of very serious charges against him, that there is a lot of evidence indicating his guilt. And I'm not talking about murder. The financial crimes are very serious. They're huge. What's this chipmunk sound effect? Dramatic chipmunk. Let me see if I can listen to this really quickly. That one? That's the dramatic chipmunk? I don't know. I Googled that and I got that. The chipmunk doesn't make such much noise. I thought it was going to be like Alvin and the Chipmunk saying, dan, 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 something like that. Can we bet on the outcome of the trial someplace? I bet you could. Vegas takes odds on just about everything. So we'll have to get somebody down in Vegas to see if, who's running the numbers on this. There's a bookie somewhere that'll take your money. Linda Hill, the sound bites crashed the burner phone. I'm trying to get them to work. Oh wait, they're here now. They worked. It just took a while to download. Law and Order. We'll see. I'll take a look at those. I have to listen to one off the stream before I play it. For some reason, I'm watching a video of a cute groundhog now. I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah. So that happened.
And now what Murdaugh stole it.
Okay. Expert on shoulder shrugs for sure. If you've been watching Alex, he's studying the jury. He is. Alex wants to see what the jury is paying attention to. And I'm not saying Alex is trying to read body language, but the jury is deciding his fate. If I were in his position, I'd be watching them too. I'd be watching to see if people look sympathetic when something sad that affected me happens. If they relate to me. He's always on alert, even when he's crying. He does tend to glance over them a lot during emotional periods. With all this jabbing back and forth with Poot and touchy-feely man.
Are we going to address subject matter jurisdiction?
Are we going to address subject matter jurisdiction? No, nor Admiralty Court, even though it might be applicable in the boating case. With all this jabbing back and forth with Poot and touchy-feely man, they have forgotten 2 people were killed. Yeah, I wish there was, at least we're not talking about financial stuff. Sharon, at least we're not in the finance stuff. At least this is more related to the murders. This is at least murder scene evidence. So that's a start. Why is my phone making all sorts of noises? Okay, I'll mute that briefly. That's the burner phone, by the way. It normally buzzes, but usually doesn't ring. People who cheat probably hate the teacher who caught them. Let's see. Little miss. We need to get you a battery charger. Battery count on 22%, or a new phone, one of the two. Ivan says, my son once outed me and my past in home ec by presenting ramen concoctions for his final. He got an A. Oh man, nothing like your kids speaking about stuff that they've witnessed at home, or say I'm talking with Mrs. R.A. and I share a very candid opinion about somebody, and then the kids share my opinion about that person with them. Yeah, that's a candid moment. Every parent has been there. It happens. I can make someone admit anything, says I'm Puzzle Man. Tish works for the public defender. Have all different styles, and some are more aggressive, but get the job done. I think I would want that. I would want that to get the job done. If I were Alex Murdaugh, says Matthew, I'd take the stand to answer questions about murder, but anything about the acts leading up to financial crimes that could be incriminating would get, at this time, I do not recall. Yeah, but the jury's going to look at that and be like, seriously? You can remember everything else, but nothing about the $12 million you stole over the last 10 years? He could probably get away with it. It would be frustrating, and I think the state would call him on it. But I mean, I guess that's something you could do. That's legal advice from a lawyer right there. No, not legal advice. I hope his teacher didn't know who actually learns all those learns the recipes. Let's see. The problem is that witnesses was only given limited information. I saw that, Suzanne. Very limited. You would think that he would receive at least all the evidence in the case file pertinent to the things he was testifying on. And it sounds like he did not receive all the pictures. He didn't receive all the reports. He didn't receive documents from individuals who conducted the very work he was testifying on, which it helps him reach the conclusion he reached. But then it sort of makes that conclusion sort of not carry the weight you would expect from a full review. Ritz says, I would love a little black cocktail dress in that fabric. We're talking about the witness's tie fabric. So next time, is he done testifying? I think he's done. We might have to go back and watch it. It's this amazing, I'd say it's like ring mail or overlapping scale type of pattern, like horizontally. It's really cool, and it's sort of got a little shimmer to it as well. That's why I called it mermaid skin. I love when kids do that now that my kids are older. Anytime I'm hanging out with kids and you see that happen, I mean, like when you've got like a young kid who's like, hey, my mom's pregnant. You're like, That's the first I've heard of it. I think does your mom know you're telling us? I think that it's always funny when kids just share because they want to share information. Actually, 4 people are dead with the Murdaugh stank attached to them, right? But 2 were only charged to the Murdaughs. I was watching a little bit about the housekeeper, and I didn't realize, for some reason, I thought the housekeeper fell inside the house. And apparently she fell outside the house, down the brick steps, which there are 8 steps outside the house, and she fell there. And I for some reason, that had escaped me. I'm not sure if you guys all knew that, and I'm the last one to find out or not. Randy, you know there are DB sound effects. Yes, we have a couple of sound effects from the DB trial on here. We try not to play them during the actual questioning part, so we've got...
Are we going to address subject matter jurisdiction?
We've got some of those, but...
I doubt it.
I doubt it. We've got lots of sound effects. Let's see. The buffer sound effect, the one at the very end, is... Oh, here we go. We're coming back. We might have to talk about these later.
Subject matter jurisdiction?
Alex stole it as well.
A lot of those are triggered by you. We do. I'll turn this down during testimony, just because we want to be able to hear the testimony. But in times where we're not testifying, we'll let you guys play some sounds. Let you guys interact a little bit, because sometimes it's hilarious with the timing of those sounds.
Your Honor, I failed to put the PowerPoint exhibit number 145 into evidence. Mr. Metters graciously has agreed to allow me to put it in at this point. Thank you.
No objection.
Offered into 145 into...
Submitted without objection.
My youngest, just using hand gestures, was trying to tell me that somebody was feeling sick. And his gesture for somebody throwing up was the most unique I've ever seen. Apparently somebody's feeling sick and wants to play the iPad. Is that what you're telling me? And it's you? But you're not sick? Somebody else? You're not sick, but you want to play too. Is Mommy at the library? Okay. Okay, you got to wait. Okay, let's wait. Close the door. All right. I think we're still synced up here. Let's see. The mouse pad, it should work. I'm working on trying to get a location other than eBay where you can buy stuff from, but give me some time to get that sorted out. Never talk crap around someone who is 4 to 14 years old. The tea will spill. 100% cachette. And at the exact wrong time as well. Let's see. Something about relevant. Could he say it's relevant?
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Love the cackle. Prison location, is this impacted by murders versus financial crimes? Puzzlement, I think you're talking about if he's convicted for the murders, that he would be in a state prison, whereas if he goes for financial crimes, those are federal, and or he could be in a federal prison for some of the financial crimes. I think that's what you're saying. And I guess federal is like more cushy than the others. Can't recall is almost better than pleading the fifth. Mark York, welcome. Thanks for admitting to being an addict, also known as subscribing to the channel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Defense calls Barbara Ann Mixon.
Barbara Ann. Barbara Ann. Is that who we're talking about here? Barbara Ann Nixon. Oh, here she is. She was in the courtroom. I thought for some reason she was out, but she was here. Where is this located? We're in. I'm in North Carolina, but trial is in South Carolina.
Hand, left hand on the Bible. Do you affirm the testimony about to give the court in this trial shall be the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Take a seat in the witness stand. You can adjust the mic if you need to. State your name again for the record, please, ma'am.
Barbara Ann Mixon.
And spell your last name.
M-I-X-S-O-N.
Is she Mixon or Nixon?
Have a seat, please. Can we pull that mic close to you? Ms. Mixon, will you tell the jury a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how old are you, and what do you do?
My name is Barbara Mixon, and I'm from Barnesville, South Carolina, and I'm a widow. I have 4 daughters, 5 grands, 2 great-grands, and I do housekeeping and care for Miss Elizabeth Murdaugh, and I'm 71 years old.
71
awesome.
years old. And how long have you been doing housekeeping for Ms. Libby Murdaugh?
42 years.
42 years.
That is
and you
incredible.
did housekeeping for Mr. Randolph Murdaugh when he was alive, I take it?
Yes, sir.
And do you know all the Murdaugh children, Randy and Lynn and John Marvin and Alec?
Know them just as good as I know my kids. They are my kids also.
And they're part of your family.
That's right.
Now, are you part of their family?
Yes, sir.
How well do you know Alex sitting here in the courtroom?
Just like I know one of my kids.
And you love him like one of yours?
I sure do.
Okay. Did you know Maggie?
I know her real well. She was like a daughter and a friend.
Did you talk to her frequently?
Every day.
And did you know Paul?
I sure did.
How often would you see Paul?
I would see Paul practically every week. He would come down to see M in Hanson, and then I would be there during the day. And some days he'll come by my house and see me.
Right. And you know Buster?
I sure do.
And he's sitting in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
Got a chance to see him?
Yes, sir.
I think she volunteered her age. I don't think they asked how old she was, did they?
Just, I'm not going to take a whole lot of time, Ms. Mixon, but we just give the jury a little bit of a understanding of how frequently Alec would go by and check on his mom and dad over, say, the last 10 years.
Practically every day when I'm there. I see them every day, and I'm there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sometime I have to work on Saturday and Sunday, and he would come by.
And what time of day, I guess, the hours that you worked over at, did you call the place Almeida, or do you call it Almeida?
Yes, sir.
And what are your normal hours there at Almeida?
8 to 3.
And it's always been 8 to 3 for?
8 to 3, always.
And you took some time off when your husband was sick, and then you went back to work. You know when you went back to work?
My husband passed on January the 2nd of 2019, and I went back to work in August of 2019.
And during that period of time, you were working 8 to 3?
8 to 3.
Okay. And
Wish she got
and
paid
I
like
think you
the
said
expert witnesses.
Alec would come by frequently to check on his mom and dad?
Yes, sir.
Would Maggie come with him?
Well, not through the week. I mostly see Maggie like on Fridays, or she might stop by like that. But later would come through the week by itself.
Okay. And I think you mentioned Paul would visit?
Yes, sir.
Just want to go to June 7th.
That was a
You remember that
weather alert on my
awful
phone,
day,
sorry.
Ms. Mixon?
Yes, sir.
Did you talk to Maggie that day?
I talked to her on June.
Oh, man.
I talked to her on June the 9th. I think it was between 7 and maybe 7:30.
June the 7th is when she was murdered.
That's right, June 7th.
And you talked to her that evening?
Yes, sir.
And you remember what y'all talked about?
Yes, sir.
What'd you talk about?
She said, Barbara, I was trying to reach you before I left to go to Somerville. I had to take my mama to the doctor, and I couldn't get a hold of you. But I am going to fix supper for the Murdaughs and for your family for Wednesday night. Because Thursday, I got to go take my daddy to the doctor. And she said, oh, Barbara, I'm going to call you back. She said, no, hold on a minute. That either Elliot or Buster calling me. She said, I tell you what, I'll call you back when I unload the car. And I never got the call back.
The last time you talked to her?
Yes, sir.
And the last conversation you had with her, she was planning to make you dinner. Is that right?
Dinner for me and her in-laws.
What was happening on June the 7th? Do you remember Mr. Randolph, what his situation was?
Well, John Marvin came to take Mr. Randolph to the doctor. And, you know, I remember that part, because he was real sick.
And after John Marvin took Mr. Randolph to the doctor, you remember that Mr. Randolph got checked into the hospital that day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember calling Alec
Yes, sir.
On the afternoon of June 7th.
Yes, sir.
And what did you talk about?
Objection to hearsay.
What did you talk about?
Objection's overruled.
That was.
What did you talk about, Ms.
Oh, I
Mitchell?
called Elliot. Well, first I called Chrissy. I always call Chrissy first. I couldn't get
it's
Chrissy.
gonna be hearsay in just a
So
minute.
then I said, well, let me call Elliot. So I called Elliot. I said, Elliot, your mom is very agitated. She is crying. I give her medicine, and I want you to come check on her later on during the day. And he said, okay, I will.
What
That
was
was
Ms. Libby agitated?
Because Mr. Randolph had done gone to the hospital.
But, and she was in fact agitated, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And what do you mean by agitated?
Well, she was crying a lot, and I couldn't get her to eat, and she just, you know, she just agitated. She wasn't.
And
Yeah,
I'm going to show
100% bone digger. This has to be a kid glove
exhibits and
situation.
evidence. Doug, if you could pull up the State's Exhibit 520 and go to page 21, which is the Rudolph extraction long version. Ms. Mixon, can you see there's an entry on this timeline at 3:58:39. Alec Murdaugh received an incoming call from Barbara Mixon. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
You think that's when you called Alec?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that is on June the 7th, for the record. All right, you can take that down, Doug. How'd you learn about Maggie and Paul?
Well, I was sitting on my porch, and my daughter, which she's in the courtroom, Shirley, Officer Stacy Lord-Hope came and pulled up. Shirley, my daughter, was in the courtroom. She jumped out of her car and told me to say, Elliot found Maggie and Paul dead.
So a police officer came to your house.
Two of them. It was Stacy Lord-Hope and then another one. And I said, could I go out there? And they said, no, you couldn't go out there.
Okay. And
And Alex, like a kid, like one of her
Ms.
own
Mixon,
kids.
that was a Monday night, and do you remember Mr. Randolph dying on a Thursday, passing on a Thursday?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that was June the 10th.
Yes, sir.
And do you remember that the funeral for Maggie and Paul was that Saturday? Do you remember the funeral service at the graveyard for Maggie and Paul on that Saturday?
Yes, sir.
And then Mr. Randolph's funeral was on that Sunday. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
And the next day was a Monday. Did you work that day?
Yes, sir.
And what time did you come to work?
8 o'clock. Well, about 5 minutes to 8.
And who did you relieve?
Shelley Smith.
Okay, so Shelley would have worked the night shift, and you came on at 5 till 8?
Yes, sir, and released her.
And did you work that Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
And what time did you get to work?
5 minutes to 8.
And were you relieving Ms. Shelley Smith?
Yes, sir.
And what about that Wednesday?
I released Shelley Smith 5 minutes to 8.
All right. And Ms. Mixon, on any of those days, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, when you relieved Ms. Shelley Smith, did you see a tarp opened up anywhere in Ms. Libby's house?
No, sir.
No blue tarp? You see no blue tarp on a rocking chair?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen a blue tarp laid out in the house?
I never seen a blue tarp laid out in the house. Never.
And you relieved Ms. Shelley every
sir.
day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of that week?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I have here.
They should have a few questions to show very much sympathy with her.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
And
you,
ask
sir?
a very easy question. And
Been
then
better,
say
been
that's it.
worse?
If they go hard on her, this is a problem.
We met a few weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
You remember down at the...
Yes, sir.
Not far from here.
Yes, sir.
You love Alex.
I love all of them.
You love
they
them.
like my children.
They like your family.
Yes, sir.
And we talked about that day before, briefly. You remember that day, the 7th, like he just asked you, we talked about what you did that day and who you talked to, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you didn't tell us about that conversation you had with Alex that day, did you?
No, sir.
Okay. When have they talked to you about that recently? When's the first time you told anybody about that?
I can't remember, but I can't remember. It's been a little while. I can't remember.
That's all. Thank you.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
Okay, they went pretty easy on her.
Your Honor, may this witness be excused?
Yes.
Thank you.
Every witness 2 steps down is excused.
Thank you.
Next witness.
Your Honor, this defense calls Micah Sturgis.
Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give the court shall be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Take a seat in the witness stand. You can adjust the microphone in the seat if you need to. State your name again for the record.
It's interesting
please,
that she didn't tell anyone else but the prosecution. That
Micah Sturgis, last name Sturgis.
Micah Sturgis. Sturgis, like the motorcycle rally location.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sturgis.
Good afternoon.
To start with, can you just tell us about yourself? Where are you from?
Sure. My name is Micah Sturgis. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I am the Director of Digital Forensics for Barefoot Professional Investigations.
You pull the mic a little closer.
Barefoot Professional.
I'm the Director of Digital Forensics for Barefoot
all my
Investigations.
barefoot, so as to
And,
not leave footprints.
tell us about your experience in law enforcement and then cell phone forensics.
Sure. So from 2004 until 2016, I was employed by the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office. It's a full-service sheriff's office located in Cleveland County, North Carolina. They're on the border of North and South Carolina. During that time period from 2004 to 2006, I was a patrol deputy. In 2006, I was promoted to a corporal or training officer, where I trained new hires. In 2009, I was promoted to detective. In that capacity, I handled everything from larcenies to murders, and then I took on the role of the digital forensic examiner for the sheriff's office. Was the first one that we had, and I formed the digital forensics lab at the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office.
He asked her one question about why.
And before we get more into digital forensics,
she didn't tell him about a conversation that
you've been involved in murder investigations before?
I have, yes.
Okay. As a lead detective?
As a lead detective, yes.
And then as you go into digital forensics, tell us about your experience with digital forensics in law enforcement, and then afterwards, and then after that, we'll get to your certifications and training.
Sure. As the digital forensic examiner for the sheriff's office, it was my responsibility to handle all the digital evidence that came into the lab, and I was also in charge of ordering things that needed to be ordered and stocked up on for digital forensic purposes. And during that time period, I was sponsored by the United States Secret Service to attend the National Computer Forensics Institute in Hoover, Alabama. Where I was trained in mobile device examination, multiple tools, Celebrite, Blackthorn, which is a form of Burla Ivy, XRY, which is another forensics tool, Paraben was another tool that we used, and so I received that training from the NCFI. They also sent me back with several things, one of which being a laptop computer or a MacBook in order to do examinations on, and also a Ramsey's box or a Faraday box that I used to use whenever we had phones that came in.
And let's just, since we're kind of on it,
you went to a seminar and got a free
training
laptop?
you've had in digital evidence?
Sure.
There are some other options to swear in without the Bible.
So I have had the basic and intermediate cell phone forensic courses, introduction, intermediate, advanced, computer forensics, internet investigations, introduction to wireless investigations. I was a Lantern certified examiner, attended the Lantern cell phone training. Lantern is a forensics tool for Apple devices, primarily Apple devices, does some Androids. Apple iOS forensics, I attended that at the American Academy of Applied Forensics in Charlotte. Cyber investigations, I was nominated and sent to the National Computer Forensics Institute by the United States Secret Service, where I received my mobile device examiner certification. I also received Celebrate certifications while there at the NCFI, and Paraben Mobile Forensic Training, Celebrate Certified Physical Analyst.
So it's not really a free laptop.
Received XRY training at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and took the XRY intermediate courses. In 2017, I attended the Infuse Conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I sat for my ENC written examination. Later came back to Charlotte and did the practical examination, where I was certified as an in-case certified examiner in 2017. And attended the Magnet User Summit a couple of times, received some training on their tool there at one in Las Vegas, the other in Nashville. Received introduction to alternate data acquisition training, wireless analysis training. I received my Lantern Certified Examiner from Katana Forensics, my XRY Certified Examiner from MSAB, the Celebrate Mobile Forensics Fundamental Certification, the Celebrate Certified Operator Certification, the Celebrate Physical Analyst Certification, and then the Celebrate Certified Mobile Examiner Certification, and also my in-case Certified Examiner Certification.
Yes.
And can you tell us about how many extractions or acquisitions of digital evidence you've performed?
Sure. Well over 500 logical physical acquisitions and extractions using Lantern, the Apple device forensic tool, Celebrate, Blackthorn, XRY, Paraben, and well over 750 images of hard disk drives or solid state drives of computers, and analyzing that data within either FTK or in-case. FTK's Forensics Toolkit.
I like that one.
It's a forensic suite. Examined an in-case Magnet IEF, which is Internet Evidence Finder. That's what they started out as. They're now Magnet Axiom is the product that they produce and put out. So I've used Axiom to do multiple examinations with that. Image with hardware forensic imagers like the Forensic Falcon. I've used Paladin to get live acquisitions, Macquisition for Macs, and Recon ITR for MacBooks. Also had to collect checkpoint encrypted devices with my time at the bank.
And that leads into, when did you leave law enforcement and what have you done since you left?
Sure. In 2016, I received a phone call from an individual who owned a private firm in Charlotte, and I went to work for him as a digital forensic examiner in the South Park area of Charlotte.
Okay. And after?
After that, I worked for him from 2016 until roughly 2019, and then I went to Wells Fargo, where I was one of 24 examiners for the Wells Fargo and Company. After leaving Wells Fargo in 2021, I went and formed this lab at Barefoot Professional Investigations.
And have you ever been qualified as an expert by court to testify before?
Yes, I have in both criminal and defense work.
Okay. Criminal work, civil cases?
And civil as well, yes.
And in the criminal cases, have you been on the defense side, the prosecution side, both sides?
I've been on both.
Okay. Have you ever been qualified as an expert in digital forensics in a murder case before?
I have, yes, in 2015.
And was that for the prosecution?
It was for the prosecution.
That looks
Your
good.
Honor, at this time I would offer the
both
witness
sides.
as an expert in cell phone forensics.
No objections.
No objection, Mr.
So qualified.
Mr. Sturgis, before we get into the what we're here to talk about, are you paid by the defense to be here?
I am.
And how much?
My rate is $300 an hour for any type of examination work or consultation, and then $600 an hour to be on the stand.
And does that go to the company that employs you?
It does.
In your experience, are you aware of anyone who does this work for free for the defense?
No, I'm not. In fact, I do IDS work. And
What is that?
IDS work is indigent service, so people who can't afford defense experts, and I do that work, and the state pays me.
So talk
turning
slowly.
to this case,
Defense should talk, or cross should talk very slowly to raise the fees.
What information have you reviewed regarding the cell phones in this case?
Everything that I've been able to look at and review has been provided by the state.
And specifically, the extractions, where
Right,
they're from?
specifically the extractions of the mobile devices and reports that they've produced.
So you haven't done anything independent of what the state has provided?
No, only the state's data.
Okay. And have you had a chance to review the timeline that's been introduced into evidence in this case?
It would be funnier if after he said how much he charges per hour, he's like, if he said, okay, then briefly, let me just say.
The one provided by the state, yes.
And
as far as the cell phone information goes, is that timeline accurate?
It is. There, with the exception of a couple of things based off interpretation of the data, but for the most part, yes, it is accurate.
Is anything missing?
There are two instances where there's some things from the Knowledge C database that aren't in the report that that I've been able to locate and identify.
Okay, and we'll later on get to that, but we won't have to belabor it because we'll just sort of be filling in those gaps. But there are three phones here. You know, Paul, Alec, Maggie, Murdaugh. What did you do with Paul's phone, if anything?
With Paul's phone, the extraction reports that I received, there wasn't much data after 8:49, somewhere in that time, on 6/7. So I didn't really focus much on that one. With Alex's phone, that one reviewed the steps that were there in the Apple Health sections. And with Maggie, I really focused my attention on Maggie's.
Okay. And so we'll focus on her phone. Was there any GPS data on her phone?
There was GPS data, but there was nothing from 6/7.
Remember when the GPS data started?
It was 6/9.
I don't think we'll get a bombshell.
And
They'll be very
you mentioned
subtle
when
things
talking
that were
about, I
missed.
think, your qualifications of Faraday bags or boxes. What are those?
That's going to be
So
the
a
big
Faraday
point.
bag or a Faraday shield is something that completely takes the device off the network. It also prevents GPS signal from reaching the device and changing data to the device.
You could describe your experience working with those in law enforcement?
Sure.
They're much more effective than airplane mode.
Part of my responsibility as the when I worked at the sheriff's office as head of the digital forensics lab was to make purchases. So I would purchase these Faraday bags for our patrol officers. So when they came out on scene and came across, if we had an instance of a crime where a phone was used and they needed to seize that phone, they had access to those bags, either in their cars or back at the office in the shared vault room where they could go in and put their evidence up. And if it's a good bag, which, you know, if you buy the right bag and the phone's put in there the proper way, then it prevents signal from reaching the phone.
And then, did you mention a box?
Yes, so it was a Ramsey's box, is what I called it. The Secret Service provided that to me when I left their training. And with that box, what I would do is I'd take the phone from the Faraday, or from evidence that was in the Faraday bag wrapped up, put it inside the Faraday box, or the Ramsey's box. It has two gloves that I'd shove my hands into. My computer and the forensic software would be plugged into the side of the Ramsey's box. It was a powered box. There was a light on the inside, so it had a window I could look into, and then I could manipulate the bag and open it up and pull the phone out and keep everything in that Faraday shield.
In your opinion, if Maggie Murdaugh's phone had been secured in the way you've just described, would it have GPS data from 6/7?
It likely would have.
Can we show what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 278?
Ooh, mood lighting, guys. Ooh, no necking. That's what my science teacher would say every time he turns the lights off.
Can we show what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 278, please?
Aziz lights. That's the second time this has happened in this courtroom with somebody just turning off all the lights.
can we see the top of the screen? Sir, do you know what the little arrow in the top left of the phone screen is?
That's the locations, I'm sorry, that's a location services arrow.
And I probably should have asked first, this was admitted as a photo of Maggie Murdaugh's phone in the lab before the extraction. Have you seen this before? Do you recognize it?
Yes, I have.
And again, that arrow indicates?
Yes, that location services are active on the device, even though the phone's in airplane mode.
Does that mean that right there in the lab it's writing GPS data?
Yes.
You can take that down, please. I'll show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 156. I ask you if you recognize that.
I do. This is Alex Murdaugh's steps and Maggie Murdaugh's steps from the Apple Health data.
I don't know when you left, Grit Grinder.
Your Honor, I would offer, I believe, without objection, Defendant's Exhibit 156 into evidence.
Katrina's pretty much. Not really. Didn't miss anything. It's been a little spicy, little jabs back and forth.
Pull up. It's the Apple.
DMV, you like
Well,
a witness
asked
or
to explain
attorney?
what some of these terms are. How does, and obviously from the title, this is out in Murdaugh's phone. How does the phone come up with that steps number?
So there are accelerometers.
Mic
I'm
a little
sorry.
closer, please.
I hope I sit up a little further. There's accelerometers inside the device. So whenever the phone is jostled or moved and there's the accelerometers move, then that accelerometer data logs a step. So independent upon where the device is, if it's on your waist or in your pocket or you're holding it in your hand when you're walking, that movement of the accelerometer indicates those steps.
And what does, how does it come up with the distance that corresponds with those steps?
It uses the satellite's GPS.
And what does the start and stop times, what do they mean?
So in the Apple Steps or Apple Health data here, you see, for instance, entry 26, that between the times of 7:55:32 and 8:05:07, that 270 steps were taken during that time period.
Okay. Now, do we know when in that time period the steps occurred?
We know that the steps or the logging of those steps started at 7:55 and 32 seconds, but whether we don't know each individual step, when each individual step took place. We just know that sometime during that time frame, those 270 steps were taken.
And between the steps numbers and the distance, do you have an opinion on which one is maybe more accurate?
In my opinion, the steps are going to be more accurate.
Why is that?
Because of the accelerometer and the hardware in the phone, they're more accurate.
Does that mean that the distance is not useful information?
It doesn't mean that the distance isn't useful information. I think the totality of everything altogether is what we have to look at here.
Go to the second page. And is this the same thing for Maggie Murdaugh's phone?
It is.
So she takes 160.
Before we get into time, just some other things to
steps
cover.
and 38
There's been a lot of
steps,
talk so far
about the
about
same
orientation
distance.
changes. You can take that down, that exhibit. What is an orientation change on an iPhone?
So an iPhone has two orientations. It has a portrait or up and down, or a landscape, which is horizontal or sideways. And whenever the device is backlit, that's when the orientation change will log and show. Now, we're not specifically talking about like a phone. If you physically take the phone and you turn it like this, we're not talking about the physical.
I'm going to just interrupt a second. I know they don't let you have a phone, but since you're gesturing,
thank you.
There's a phone that might.
So what we're talking about is not the physical positioning of the phone, but the orientation of the data that you're reading on the device, that orientation change.
And what do the start and end times mean for an orientation change?
So when a orientation change is made, a start time is logged. That's the start time of the orientation change that you're seeing on the device itself.
And for Maggie's phone, what was the last orientation change? When was that?
I believe that was 9:06 and 12 seconds p.m. on 6/7.
And when did that one end or complete?
I believe that was 9:06 and 20 seconds.
And at when it completed, what was the orientation of the phone for the rest of the time?
It was in portrait mode.
Okay. If the screen is off, can an orientation change occur?
If the screen is off, no, the orientation change can't occur.
If the orientation change happens in the database at the exact moment the screen comes on, does that tell you anything?
When I see that, when I see a orientation change at the exact time that the screen is lit up, if the device was in horizontal or landscape mode and then moved into portrait mode and the screen comes on, then all of a sudden, the exact same time, it changes into portrait mode. To me, that indicates that the phone was in a portrait mode position, and then the screen comes on, and then the orientation change takes place inside the phone.
So does that mean that movement when the screen is off can appear as an orientation change when the screen comes on?
When the screen comes on, yes. When the screen's backlit, that's when the orientation change. It cannot make an orientation change unless the back screen's lit.
So kind of moving on then to, we've talked about orientation changes and they don't happen when the screen is off, as you said. Can motion of the phone turn on the screen?
Yes. Very little motion can turn on a screen.
And what is the raise to wake feature on that?
So the Apple has a raise to wake feature that's set by default. Currently this phone, and unfortunately you can't see there.
Well,
but
could you, if the court's permission, could you come down to show the jury?
It's on. See that small movement. Can I put it right here? No? Okay. The slight raising of the phone will indicate. So when the phone's here, if you raise the phone, it raises the wake. So if you raise the phone like that, if the phone's flipped over, and flip the phone back over, it wakes up. If you move the phone from this mode to here, the phone comes on. So that's the raise the wake function.
And was this feature turned on Maggie Murdaugh's phone on June 7th?
By all indications on the database, there were that it was there. Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the location of Maggie Murdaugh's phone when it was covered by law enforcement on 680?
I am.
And have you reviewed the recently received GPS data for Alex Murdaugh's Suburban when it was passing that location?
I did.
Okay. So do you know when the Suburban passed the location of the phone?
When it was leaving the house where the crimes took place, it was around 9:08 when it was passing the location where that phone was located. And then on the return trip back, it was 9:59, I believe 19 seconds.
Was Maggie Murdaugh's phone screen off during those times?
Yes.
Now, you're just here as a cell phone expert, right?
That's correct.
So can you offer any expert opinion on how a phone would tumble or bounce or move when thrown from a car going 40 plus miles an hour, into the brush in the side of a country road?
No, there's just too many variables, and I'm not an expert on physics. So.
Can you tell us how much motion would be required for the screen to come on a phone?
Very little. Just reaching and picking this phone up like I just did there, the phone comes on. So very little.
Okay. And again, in the times that Alec Murdaugh's car was passing, the screen never came on.
That's correct. The database indicated it was off.
Turn to Maggie Murdaugh's phone. Show you what's been marked as defendant's 158. Do you recognize this?
I do.
And what is it?
This is a PowerPoint presentation printed off that you put together, but it's based off of the Knowledge Seed database data that
and to be clear, I typed it into PowerPoint. Have you reviewed every slide in that presentation?
I have.
Have you verified the data on every slide?
I have.
And you've confirmed independently the data on every slide?
Yes.
No objection.
Your Honor, I would offer, it's been marked as defendant's 158 into evidence. So I'm going to go through this. No, don't zoom the screen.
Whatever you do, don't zoom in. Hang on.
So we're looking at just a very short period of time, right? Can you describe the time period we're looking at?
Yes, this is on June 7th, from 8:49 p.m. until 9:07 p.m.
All right, so we're going to go through here and just see exactly what was happening with her phone on that time. So it's the next slide, please. And what's happening here?
At 8:49:26 seconds.
You can pull the mic closer, please.
Sorry. At 8:49:26, that's the last text message that was read by Maggie. It was indicated read on the device.
Next.
At 8:49:28, the backlight goes off.
And what does that mean?
Means that
the screen's
dark. Yeah, sorry.
And next.
At 8:49:31, the phone locks and it remains locked until it's recovered by law enforcement the next day.
Debbie, it's probably something I did.
Next.
Operator error on my
At
side.
8:53:08, the backlight comes back on. The phone's illuminated.
And next.
And 8:53:12, orientation to portrait starts.
Next.
At 8:53:15, that's when the phone began logging the 59 steps.
Next.
And
it's on the screen. And
yep, sorry. And at 8:53:20, there's Siri usage. This was indicated in the Knowledge Seed database, and that can be done by squeezing the side button, holding on to it for a short period of time, and Siri activates at that point.
Okay, so this is a user interface, you know.
Yes, it actually shows up as Siri UI, so it's a Siri user interface.
Next.
At 8:53:24, the orientation to portrait completes.
Next.
At 8:53:28, the backlight goes off again, so the phone's dark.
Next.
At 8:53:32, the backlight comes back on the phone and illuminates.
Next.
At 8:53:44, the backlight goes off again.
Do you have any opinion about why it just popped on and off like that?
I mean, there were no indications in the Knowledge Seed database that any notifications came in or anything of that nature. The only thing I could think would be that the phone were jostled or lifted or somehow the light came on.
And next.
Marcy, it's a different
at
road.
8:54:32, the backlight comes on.
Next.
At 8:54:34, there's an entry in the Knowledge Seed database about the camera usage, camera starts. So in that, there are, in that database, and if you don't mind, I'll kind of expand on this. In that database, the Knowledge Seed database is comprised of tables and rows and columns. And in that database, on that specific item where the camera was, there is another column that is called the Z-structured metadata. And so if I follow the camera under the value string there indicating that the camera was activated. If I follow that line all the way across to where that structured database is, structured metadata is in that table, I'll get a PK number, a primary key number. That number was 571. In the Knowledge C database, there's another table within the Knowledge C database called Z structured metadata. So if I go to that table, because I found that number under the Z structured metadata column, if I go to that specific table in the database and look for that primary key 571, and I scroll all the way out to the end, I'll see a description of what that 571 is. And in that case, here, it was com.apple.springboard.lockscreen.scroll, which would indicate that it was a camera function on the lock screen, and that when you press that button in the bottom right corner of the phone that has the little camera indication, it'll scroll over to a camera, or you can swipe over from the left and then it indicates that there's a camera there.
So was this some sort of attempt by the phone on its own at Face ID?
It didn't indicate that it was a Face ID at all. It indicated that it was a camera.
And by indicated cameras, did it indicate that someone was a person using the phone activated the camera?
Yes.
Okay. Next.
At 8:54 and 35 seconds, the camera use ends.
Okay. And keeping in mind the time stamp, go to the next slide.
At 8:54 and 40 seconds, the orientation to landscape starts.
Okay. And so how long was that since the camera usage?
About 5 seconds since it ended.
Next slide.
And then at 8:54 and 44 seconds, the orientation to landscape ends.
And next.
At 8:55 and 4 seconds, the backlight turns off and the orientation to portrait starts.
Now, what's happening on this one? What's happening here?
Yep. So right here, the phone was previously in landscape mode, and it settled in at that landscape mode at 8:44 seconds. The backlight went off at 8:55 and 4 seconds. At that same time, the orientation of portrait starts, and this is indicative of what I was talking about earlier when you rotate the phone while it's in the screen's not lit, and then the screen comes on and the orientation changes once the screen pops on. It'll flip over to wherever the camera or wherever the phone is turned to. At this time, orientation to portrait ends at that time, and the orientation to the landscape starts at that time. So that's exactly what I was talking about. And then the phone stops logging those 59 steps at that time as well.
I'm going to kind of emphasize this. Could we go back 4 slides?
Yeah, I need to see this. I'm not.
Right.
I want to see this on a timeline.
So when the camera use ends here, 8:54:35, going forward, one slide, we have an orientation change.
That's correct. To the landscape starts, yes. Orientation to the landscape ends at 44 seconds after.
And then the next slide. So now that the screen has gone off, how long has it been since the camera use?
Let me go back in my. So it's 8:55 and 04. Since the camera use ended at 8:54 and 35, and then the backlight goes off at 8:55 and 4 seconds. So, what is that, a minute?
Is that 29 seconds?
Hang on, sorry. Yeah, it's 29. I apologize. My math was terrible, wasn't it? Yes.
And then going forward, so what we had in that 29 seconds was an orientation change, and then the screen goes off.
Right, that's correct.
None of these data points are different than the state's data points as far as the timestamps go.
Where are we going with it now? They just flipped the slide on me.
He said he had 2 items, though, that he found that the state didn't find on the extraction.
All right, so let's go back to the slide that's timestamped 8:55:32. Is this where we left off?
That's where we left off, yes. So here, the backlight's on, the orientation to portrait ends, and then the orientation to landscape starts immediately when the backlight comes back up on the phone. And then the phone stops logging those 59 steps at that time as well.
And the next slide, 4 seconds later.
4 seconds later, the backlight's back off again.
Okay. Now we'll go kind of quickly here. The next slide comes on.
9:03, the backlight's on. At 9:04 and 23, we have a missed call from Alex that starts. At 9:04 and 23, the backlight goes off.
All this is doing is triggering photoepileptic seizures in the jury members. I think we need a different display.
The backlight went off at the exact same time that a call came in from Alex Murdaugh.
That's correct, yes.
And now the next slide.
And then we have a missed call from Alex that ends.
That's the call we just saw, right, ending.
Yes.
Do you have an opinion on why the screen light would go off pretty much right when a call comes in?
The only thing that I could figure is when the phone came in, or excuse me, the call came in, that the person hit the side button to turn it off and then put it down or flip the phone over.
Or threw it
Do you
on
know
the
of
backlight
anything on
goes
the
off.
phone that would cause the screen to go off right when a call comes in and stay off during the call that does not involve human interaction with the phone?
No, I don't.
I'll go to the next slide.
9:05 and 44 seconds, the backlight comes back on. And at 9:06 and 12 seconds, an orientation change to portrait begins.
Okay. And the next one, and we'll stop on that.
At 9:06 and 14 seconds, there's an incoming call from Alex that starts at that time.
And then the next one.
And then the incoming call from Alex ends at 9:06 and 18 seconds.
And the next slide.
And then we have an orientation change to portrait ends at 9:06 and 20
And
seconds.
stopping here, that call we just saw coming in from Alec, that was sandwiched within this orientation change.
That's correct, yes. It was in between them.
And next slide.
9:06:52, we have another incoming call from Alex that starts.
And the next one.
And then it ends, the incoming call from Alex ends at 9:06 and 59 seconds.
Now the last slide.
At 9:07, the backlight goes off and it remains off until 9:31 and 44 seconds.
Okay. And do you know from your review of the GM GPS data where the Alec Murdaugh Suburban was at 9:07?
Yes, at 9:07, he was like traveling from the house, or from his home to the house in, I forget the name of the city.
Like right, precisely at 9:07, where was he at that moment?
The 9:07 would be the driveway, I believe.
Right, the driveway.
Yes.
And Maggie's phone, the screen did not come on again until 9:31?
That's correct.
And just one more time, how much motion does it take to turn the screen?
Very little. I mean, just the slightest lift of the phone turns the screen on.
So he's saying that Maggie's phone was reached its final position, an orientation change, prior to Alex Murdaugh leaving the property. Is that what I'm hearing?
Please answer any questions from the state. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you.
And before that,
don't forget your phone.
You'll need that to play Candy Crush during this next segment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Conrad. I'm well, thank you.
The state says that Maggie's phone didn't detect.
I believe at the beginning of your testimony, you testified that you felt it likely there was some location data stored on Maggie's phone from June 7th that potentially was overwritten. Did I understand that correctly?
I said that there was data that was on the phone from June 8th, and that correction, June 9th, and that data likely could have been on there had it been preserved properly.
And explain to the jury just real quick, how does an iPhone store that GPS information? In generic terms, and then if I need to get more specific, I will.
Sure. So the iPhone keeps that data, and it uses the GPS
Just go ahead and
location,
get comfy, too.
The GPS satellite triangulates with the GPS satellites, and it stores that data.
Right. And does it store it in a sort of cache?
It does.
All right.
It is a cache.
And when it comes to iOS, as opposed to, say, a standard hard drive, iOS keeps certain databases caches fairly limited, correct? And
That's
doesn't
correct.
allow them to access the entire memory available on a device at any given point, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And do you know, or at least in your training or your investigation, have you been able to determine just how big a typical cache is, at least would have been for Maggie's phone during this time?
No, I didn't research that. No.
Okay.
No, I didn't research that, no.
Okay, so you don't know how long Maggie's phone would have potentially stored GPS information at this during 2021, correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
no.
All right. And just so I understand correctly, you agree that a iPhone will not record an orientation change if the screen is off, correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right. So I believe Mr. Barber handed you his phone to kind of demonstrate this lift to weight thing, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And do you know what model iPhone Mr. Barber has? Did you look at it?
Don't know exactly which iPhone he has.
Okay. And do you know what version of iOS is on Mr. Barber's phone?
I do not know.
And Apple updates its iOS fairly frequently, correct?
They do, yes.
Do you know, at least, we don't know what's on Mr. Barber's phone, but do you know what the current release version is today?
It's 16 point something.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know in your review of Maggie's phone what version was on Maggie's phone on June 7th of 2021?
I believe that was 14 point something.
I'm sorry.
I think it was 14.6, if I'm not mistaken. It was somewhere in the 14 range.
And are you aware that in some of these iOS updates, some of these sensitivities and some of these settings can change, correct?
Depending on bug fixes and things, yes.
And are you aware of a change that occurred in iOS 15 that changed how iPhones record orientation changes, or when they record orientation changes?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Okay. Can we go back to I forget, let's see, the PowerPoint? What exhibit was that? I believe it was it 155? Was there two? I just was aware of
It's
one.
like, talk faster. This is $600 an hour. Quit stalling.
For this witness.
Do you know how much I'm going to have to steal to pay for this?
This one. And this doesn't have a slide number, so bear with me. But first of all, before we talk about Maggie real quick, you did review Paul's phone to a certain degree, correct?
To a certain extent, yes.
All right. And do you recall from your review of Paul's phone when the last time his phone was unlocked on June 7th of 2021?
I don't recall, no, I'm sorry.
And we can find the state's exhibit if we need to, but would you disagree if I told you it was 8:49 p.m. or shortly thereafter?
If that's what's in the state's exhibit, I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
MCAT just gifted a membership on Angelina Knox. You were the
And I believe
recipient. Thank you,
one of your
MCAT.
first slides here is that Maggie's phone locked. Let's see, go to 1, 2, 3 slides.
I want a box
one
for.
more. All right, back one, I'm sorry. 8:49:31, and in your review of Maggie's phone found that her phone was locked at 8:49:31.
That should be one of my merch
And
items.
it was not unlocked
is a
until when?
box
The next
for it.
day?
The next day, that's
For
correct.
your own
And
court
that's when it's
defense.
recovered by law
By
enforcement?
law enforcement, yes, sir.
Okay.
Thanks for the super chat. Great Granger.
And did you review Alex's, you said you reviewed Alex's phone to a certain degree too. I think you said the steps, right?
The steps, yes.
And in your review, did you find any steps on his phone between 8:09 and 9:02 p.m.?
Let me go back and take a look at that. (8:09) and 9:02 p.m. Is that
Correct.
correct? No, I don't recall seeing that. I'm seeing the stuff from the knowledge seat here.
Okay, all right. But Maggie's phone's locked at 8:49:31 and it does not unlock till the next day, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Paul's locks for the last time around the same time, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And Paul's phone, in your review, to recall what time the battery died on his phone?
I don't recall, no, sir.
Would you dispute me if I said, and we can find the exhibit if we need to, his phone shut down at about 10:34 p.m.?
If that's what's in the report, I don't dispute it, no, sir.
And would you agree with me if I said that Paul's phone locking at 8:49 and remaining on until 10:34, first of all, that's about, what, hour and a half or so?
That's correct, yes.
And do you know his battery state when his phone locked at 8:49 p.m.?
It was in low power mode.
So it was less than 10%, 2%, something like that?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And would you agree with me when the fact that his phone remained on until 10:34 be indicative that it wasn't really handled much at all or used at all?
Yes.
Okay. And did you find any other evidence of any usage on Paul's phone after 8:49 that you can recall?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And when I say use, just so it's clear between us, I mean either answering a call, making a call, reading a text, sending a text, orientation change.
And no user interaction with it.
All right. And so let's talk a little bit about the orientation change for a minute. So would you agree that the most likely reason for an orientation change is human interaction, meaning humans using the phone?
Yes.
All right. Are there any other possible explanations when you see an orientation change, or any other explanations that you, in your opinion, that could explain an orientation change?
Only if a phone, was in one position, lit up, fell off, and landed in another position.
Okay.
But no.
And when you see a series of orientation changes, 30 seconds or a minute between each orientation change, it'd be difficult to explain that by a phone just kept falling on its own, correct?
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
If you see a series of 3 orientation changes, just speaking hypothetically for a moment, if you see a series of 3 orientation changes, say 30 seconds separate them or thereabouts, or a minute separate them, could you explain that? Would it be very likely that a series of falls cause those orientation changes?
It depends on how many falls it was making, but being jostled around in a pocket and the light on, being turned, if it's in a person's hand, being turned back and forth, and that would be the only thing I could indicate with an orientation change.
Okay.
He's taking money out of his 401k to pay for his lawyers for his defense, Andy.
Slideshow back up, please.
The old retirement. He's cashing in to pay for Dick and Jim.
2. Okay, 8:53:15. There you go. And this is when Maggie's phone starts showing some steps, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you would agree that the most likely explanation for this is the phone is moving in some manner, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And those accelerometers are recording, or the bounces are jostling, that would most likely be explained by steps, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, you can't tell us who's carrying that phone at this time, can you?
No.
All right, next slide. All right, and so at this 8:53:20, you say there's some Siri usage and a squeezing of the side button. And let's just, is that the only explanation of why you'd see the Siri pop up on a phone, is the squeezing the side button, or are there other possibilities?
There's another possibility of her saying, hey Siri, and then that happens because it's a Siri user interface.
Okay, so
Be
there
funny
could
if,
be
like,
another explanation,
all
but
the
it's
courts-
most likely someone squeezing a side button saying,
Could be the
"Hey,
side
Siri."
button say,
Can
hey
in
Siri,
court all
but it's a
respond.
user interface with it.
Okay. All right. Go to next slide, please. Actually, let's go to 854.34.
They really spent a lot of money getting the graphics on this display
Should be one
just
more.
right.
One more.
Somebody went to a lot of
There
work.
we go.
$600
All
an
right,
hour. This is
and
what
here
you're
you
paying
say
for it right there.
the camera gets activated, correct?
That's correct.
And you think the most likely explanation is somebody swiped the camera symbol on a locked phone, correct?
Right, either swipe the camera or touch the bottom button because it's coming from the springboard lock screen.
Okay, we say bottom button. Which button?
If you're looking at an iPhone and well, my most recent iOS, I think it's 16 point something, in the bottom right corner, there's a button that you can touch and hold and the camera comes on. But when that happens, it comes over from the left and the camera scrolls over.
Okay. And then next slide. And then 854.35. This is 1 second later. The camera use ends. Correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
And so, in your opinion, based off the fact that that was used for a total 1 second, do you think that was someone intending to actually use the camera and take a picture?
I wouldn't know, but I wouldn't think so. I mean, that's just a.
But the camera's only open for a second, correct?
Right. They couldn't have taken a picture in a second.
All right.
They saved some money on the display, on the presentation. That's all I'm saying.
All right. 855.32. Okay. And we see the orientation change here at 855.32. Next slide. And the backlight goes off at 855.36, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
We'll go to the next slide. And the backlight's back on 9:03:52. So that's roughly, how long is that? 8 minutes? I don't know if I'm gonna make you do math, but.
Yeah, about that, yes.
And so the screen's off for that 8 minutes, correct?
That's correct.
And so, would you agree with me? It does seem likely someone's handling that phone Maggie's phone between 8:53 and 8:55, correct?
Yes.
All right. We see orientation changes. We see the potential button being pushed. Someone's got that phone in their hand, correct?
That's correct.
You can't tell us who, correct?
No, I can't.
All right. And then at 8:55:32, we see kind of an 8-minute gap in activity, correct? Between
Yes.
8:55 and 9:03, correct?
Yes.
Almost as if somebody put that phone down.
Yes, that's a possibility.
Whoever had it, correct?
Correct.
And you can't tell us where they put that phone down, right?
No, sir, I can't.
Could they put it in a vehicle?
That's very possible. I don't know.
A golf cart?
I don't know.
Okay, let's go to 9:04:23. Yep. All right. And we see this incoming call from Alex. And you
Yes.
said the screen turns off almost immediately, correct?
That's correct, yes.
In your opinion, you think somebody actually hit the button to turn
Somebody
the screen
shut
off,
the screen
correct?
off, yes.
Okay. But the screen comes back on at 9:05:44, if we can go to that slide. Correct?
Yes.
And then 9:06:12, we see an orientation change, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And 2 seconds later, we see what? Next slide, please. What is this? What is
That's
this
an
indicate?
incoming call from Alex.
Okay. 2 seconds after the orientation change starts, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then go to 9:07. Okay. And the screen goes off at 9:07, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And stays off for, what, roughly 23 minutes?
Yes.
And you just testified with Mr. Barber that Alex's car was sitting just outside his house, correct?
That's according to the documents that I reviewed. Yes.
And I don't know if you have this information in front of you, but did you determine when that GPS data shows his vehicle start to move?
Yes, it,
After 9:07.
oh, after 9:07?
Well,
The-
first of all, is this vehicle stationary at 9:07?
No, it's in the driveway at 9:07, but it's at, it starts at the house at 9:06 and 52 seconds PM.
When do you start to see motion, or do you?
9:06 and 52 seconds is where I start to see the motion there.
Okay, and 8 seconds later is when Maggie's screen turns off?
Yes.
For 23 minutes?
Yes.
And you agree that a iPhone, at least with version 14.6, when the screen's off, it will not record an orientation change, correct?
That's correct.
And you agree with me that you don't know what version of iOS that Mr. Barber had on his phone that you just did that demonstration?
That's correct.
Did you conduct any tests with the phone with 14.6 to see what movement can cause it to, or what can cause that phone to the screen to come on?
I don't have any 14.6 phones.
Okay.
The sunlight's going to be eating this witness's face here in just a moment. Debbie, our hearts go out to you. Our condolences. I think you can see in chat everyone's sending virtual hugs. You've been here for since pretty much the beginning. For those that don't know, Debbie was here way before I had 1,000 subscribers. She actually won the rings, all the metal detecting rings. Debbie, I'm sorry to hear your father passed away. We'll definitely be thinking of you. If we can do anything, let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Conrad.
Mr. Sturgis, you were asked about iOS version 15 and a change in orientation behavior. Is the raise to wake feature something distinct from orientation behavior?
No, the raised to wake is a separate from orientation behavior. Raised to wake's a separate application within.
Is raised to wake the feature that causes the phone to come on with slight movement?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe that the raised to wake feature that you've already testified was active on Maggie Murdaugh's phone works any different than any iPhone today?
I have no evidence to prove that, no.
And again, you can refer to your notes. When Alec Murdaugh's SUV passed the location where Maggie Murdaugh's phone was recovered, the side of the road, was the screen off?
The screen was off, yes.
It was off as he approached it?
Yes.
And again, how much movement does it take to turn the screen on?
Very little movement.
And this is a separate issue from orientation changes?
That's correct.
But we're talking about, are we talking about movement activating the screen?
That's correct, yes.
Are we talking about the screen being sideways or up?
No, we're not talking about the orientation. We're talking about the actual raised to wake function on the phone.
The camera usage, and in fact, no picture was taken that you're aware of.
Right, that's correct. I didn't see any photographs there for that time.
But is it your opinion, what is your opinion about whether someone deliberately activated that camera?
I mean, they could have. They could have been an accident. I don't know. I don't know what the person could have been doing, but it was a user interaction with the device.
And there was talk about phones falling to change orientation. Can a phone change orientation without actually falling?
No, I mean, there has to be some type of movement for the phone from portrait to landscape.
Right, but you don't have to drop the phone?
No.
So
if it's sitting upright, I mean, if it's sitting on its side, I can flip it this way and the orientation changes.
If somebody's running with a phone, can it change orientation?
Yes. Those are user events that can cause that.
Can we pull up what's been previously admitted as Defense Exhibit 45? This is, as I just said, previously admitted. Do you recognize this as GPS data in a cache database?
This looks like a yes, cache for the ZRT cell location database. Yes.
And what's the timestamp for the first entry?
It's 6/9/21 at 2:51 and 21 seconds p.m.
In your opinion, would it be fair to say that if this phone had been extracted or put in a Faraday bag a couple of days earlier, we would have GPS data from 6/7?
In my opinion, it's likely that we could.
Can we pull up the step data exhibit? The Apple step data exhibit. Okay, we previously talked about this, Alec Murdaugh's steps. Between entries 27 and 28, you see those time periods? Just want to remember that and go to the next page. Here we have Maggie's steps. Are there any steps, periods of steps that correspond between Maggie Murdaugh and Alec Murdaugh?
No, I don't see any.
So there's no period where both phones are stepping in the same period?
No.
Okay. And if we stay on this one, if we look at entries 5 and 6, the distance is almost identical, 31 meters.
Yes, it is.
Are the steps different?
The steps are different.
Is that a significant difference?
Not a significant difference for the 5 and 6, no.
So 59 versus 43, so is that 16? It took 16 more steps to go the same distance?
Yes.
So does that indicate shorter steps?
Shorter steps, yes.
Okay, just the final question is to emphasize here. You can't tell us what a phone would do tossed out a window. That's not your expertise.
No, I can't.
But you can tell us how much motion it takes to turn on the screen.
Yes, very little motion.
And you've demonstrated that.
Several times, yes.
And that feature of the iPhone was active on her phone.
Yes.
And it is totally separate from orientation behavior.
That's correct, it is.
No further questions.
Anything further?
Just a couple of things, Your Honor. You said you reviewed Paul's phone. Did you review the video that's been called the Kindle video in this case?
Yes, I have seen the video.
And did you have any information that would lead you to disagree that video was recorded at 8:44, about 55 seconds on the night of June 7th?
No, I don't have anything.
And the location data, would you agree the location data for that video was recorded at the kennels on the Murdaugh property at Moselle?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Barber was talking to you about steps data. And just so it's clear to the jury, and I'm going to speak in hypotheticals here for a second, but if you see the iPhone record steps over an interval of about 5 minutes, for example, it records a certain number of steps over that 5 minutes.
Okay.
Does that mean, is that phone trying to tell you that someone's uniformly walking at an exact pace that keeps them moving over that entire 5 minutes?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. They could stop at some point in the middle of that, correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right. And so they could stop and pick something up in the middle of a period showing steps, correct?
That's correct. It's just the steps between those two times.
All right. So you can't testify, you can't tell us if between, pull up the steps exhibit real quick. Next slide. All right. And looking at entry 28 on Alex's phone.
Entry what, I'm sorry?
28.
28?
Yep.
Okay.
And between 902 and 906, we see, what, 283 steps, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right. And you can't tell us if his phone stopped at any point between those.
No.
What's
no,
that, roughly 4 minutes or a little over 4 minutes?
No, just 283 steps between those two times.
So he could have walked 200 of those steps in the first 2 minutes and then only slowed down for the rest of the 2 minutes, correct? Or it could have been vice versa.
Yes.
Or he could have stopped for an entire minute somewhere in there. You can't tell us any different, correct?
It'd be unlikely to stop for an entire minute. I think you stop for that long of a period of time a new entry would be made. But
Do you know, is there a cutoff for iOS
no,
that would?
I think that just based off of what I'm seeing here, I mean, for instance, entry 29 and 30, you have about a 3-minute gap there, and
Okay.
yeah.
So maybe if he stopped for a minute, it would have started a new entry?
It could have. It
But
could
if he
have.
was stopped for a shorter period of time, you wouldn't necessarily have, correct?
Right.
Okay. All right. And finally, Mr. Barber has asked you about distance, and I think I want to make sure I understood you correctly. I think you testified that you would consider the actual steps count to be more accurate than the distance. Is that
I
correct?
would, yes.
Have you found any research or studies that has measured or the accuracy of steps or distance in iOS devices?
I have, yeah, and for instance, I've had cases where the step count and the GPS data is different sometimes.
Okay. Yes. And in your opinion, the steps count is probably more the most accurate?
In my opinion, yeah, the steps
Okay.
count is more accurate.
Okay.
You may step down.
I think we might be done for the night. Don't think they're going to start a new expert right now. See what Mr. Harpootlian says.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. We
we're
resume
done.
at 9:30 tomorrow. Please do not discuss the case.
$1,200 later, that witness is done. Yeah. He does collect $600 an hour for his testimony. That's a pretty good rate for an expert testimony. I will say he did a pretty good job. I think if he was the one who presented or prepared that exhibit, it was a little bit on the minimalist side. There was not a lot to see there. I mean, the black and white background was, it was nice, but that was pretty much all we saw.
Anything further on this day?
Stay, Your Honor.
Nothing with the defense, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll resume at 9:30 tomorrow.
9:30 tomorrow. That means if Nicole is available, Nicole from Goodman Law, now would be a great time to give a call on the burner phone if you'd like to talk about your impacts or the impactful moments you saw during the day today. We'd love to have you. Matthew as well. Your voice you said was gone, so maybe we'll reserve you for another day. Let me go ahead and remove that pinned message because Mr. Sturgis is no longer on the stand. Why don't they better explain all the cell data, phone data, and what it means? Yeah, it's a lot of data, and it takes an expert to understand it almost. So you need to have a timeline. I think the timeline the state provided on Friday was good. There's some other timelines out there that are available if you go on Twitter or some of the other formats. On Discord, you're going to find them on the Discord page as well. So if you want to see those are available. And they're great. I love those timelines. They really help spell it out. Obviously, a lot of them have sort of like interpretation. What says during this time period, what you're seeing here means this is what could have happened. That's one explanation. Obviously, the state has one, the defense has another, and so we'll see how that goes. Let's see. Jonathan Davenport says they've got 12 to 18 inches of snow, and then plus 28 inches of snow in some drifting areas. Is that off your roof? Is it sliding off the roof? That is a ton of snow. Murdaughs are getting ready. The jury gets a head start before everyone else gets let out of court. So I think they're. Look at that mustache back there. Do you see the guy that looks like? Oops. I'm not sure who this is. Let's see who it is. Hang on. Hello. 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 It was not Nicole. See, where's the guy? Just behind Alex's brother back there, rocking the long hair and that amazing. I think it's a handlebar mustache. Do you see that? I hope he turns again. Let's see. He's not turning, and I wanted to see him. All right, so that's pretty much all we're going to see from the court today. Everyone's leaving. There I am. Oops. Let's try this again. All right, that was a very expensive $200 PowerPoint. Always going to go, what about me? Yeah, we should probably open up for a phone call session where people can call in. Rachel Wood says, Recovery Addict, we should have a best comment during the trial poll. My vote is the phones ran away from the shooting. I'm sorry, I missed who posted it. Yeah, the phone saw the shooting and headed for the hills. Yet there's some hilarious comments in here, mixed with some very heavy emotional news. Obviously, Debbie, our hearts go out to you. She lost her father. The funeral's going to be tomorrow. Debbie's been with us pretty much from the beginning, and just been amazing. And I appreciate she's reached out to me a lot on the burner phone as well. There was a lot of funny things as well. That's where the laugh comes in. Whoever triggered that, obviously not laughing at Debbie. We're laughing at some of the hilarious comments that have come in over the trial. I'm going to turn the audio up on the sound effects one more time. Buster is watching Alex. Let's see. I could make more visually engaging PowerPoint after a few glasses of wine. Who do I invoice? Just call this the defense. I think they're hiring people at the last minute. Chat is hilarious. You guys are great. Call in the YouTube radio show. Yes, we could do that, Jim Bob. It's dangerous. I'll admit it's dangerous because because of this. RA receives phone call. Hello. Other end of the phone, heavy breathing, whispers. Yeah. It's dangerous because I don't know who's going to call in, and obviously I have to. If it gets really bad, if somebody jumps on and starts saying some bad words, then I've got time to just kill the stream, and I can do that.
Alex stole it as well.
I can also mute people and things like that. But so I prefer to screen people just a little bit. So like Thomas and Matthew and Nicole, they're people I can trust to get on the show and not talk bad. We had Kurt on here from Uncivil Law a while back. They understands that this isn't the place to swear and be rude and crude, and it's great. I need a receptionist. Are you applying, Cachette? I do need a call screener. It's a burner phone though. Literally, it's a burner phone. Look, I'm picking it up and the screen's not coming on. What does that mean? Okay, there it came on finally when I clicked the button. Bunch of crank call. I get some crank calls from Stephen Lee.
I'm not a camel.
Stephen Lee is the individual who drew this artwork for us that we use for our logo at the end, and he calls me at like 3 a.m. in the morning. He's like, "This is your drunk dial, 3 a.m." Which is really funny. All part of your plan. Whoa. Thanks, Thomas. Appreciate that. Okay. I think we're going to be done tonight. I've got an activity tonight. This is my night that I go out with the youth group that I serve with, and
Alex stole it as well.
And tonight, the young men in the group they're learning like woodworking, and they're making those cutting boards where you cut up different types of wood and you glue them together, and then you plane them down. You make a cool cutting board. Tonight we're going to finish them, so I'm really excited seeing how they turn out. But it'll be awesome. Let's see. Oh, there's tweet. There's a little bit of a chirp there. Protect the sensitive feet of your mouse. Yes, that's the mouse pad. I think the listing works on eBay now. I think I fixed it. Hopefully I haven't. I know there's only one size available, and it makes you choose the size and stuff, which is weird. I don't know how to get rid of that. Mississippi Raptors and Reptiles, bye. See you in the morning. It will be a great day. For those that are new here, you're welcome to come back. Really, you honestly are. This is a good group to hang out with, as you can see. You can see from the chat we're like a loose-knit family. Not the kind of family that kills each other, but the kind of family that really hangs out and looks out for each other's backs. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up because I've got that tonight. I don't think the phone is ringing, so Nicole's probably busy. Wait. I'll call tomorrow if you want, so you can go to work and do woodwork. That'll work for me, Nicole. That'll be a little easier. Everybody, please. I can't say that without the music going. I can't give my outro without the music. There we go. Matthew says, I'm trustworthy, in quotes, air quotes. Someone called my high school career counselor so I can rub it in her face. Matthew, that's awesome. Hope you get feeling better, Matthew. Get over that gunk you got and get back to court and go kick some butt. Cakes Boo, thank you for being here. Appreciate you. All the mods, really, you're absolutely incredible. This is a really amazing community. So the mods don't have a lot of work to do, but the work they do is amazing. So I'd like to thank them all. Thank you all for being here. Where can I get this nice music? Lotus, this is actually available from, well, if I'm quiet and you hold up your phone to the speaker, you can say, hey Siri, what song is this? And it will tell you. It's available on YouTube. It's free copyright music. It's also available under another name if you have a YouTube creator account, which you probably don't, just because they take a little bit to get. It's free from that library, but you can find it online. I just don't know the name offhand. If you'll come back tomorrow and ask me first thing in the morning, I'll have it for you, Lotus. Does that work? I'll be live streaming starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow. But I'll get the song for you. It's called Press Fuse on the YouTube side, but on the YouTube audio library side. But if you want to look for it on YouTube, it's under something completely different. Good. Overthrow the mods night. No. Thank you all. Pixel Flip, thanks for being here. Tonight, when you guys go home, please hug the people you love. Smile at someone to make their day just a little bit better. And please stay safe till we go live again, which is 9 a.m. tomorrow morning as we continue the defense portion of this trial of South Carolina versus Alex Murdaugh on the murder trial of his wife and son. A couple firearm charges in there as well for good measure, but we'll have more from the defense tomorrow. Thanks, you guys. Please stay safe. We'll see you.
Alex stole it as well.